IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. It is Thursday, so you guys know what that means. We are talking keys to victory. Notre Dame hosts the Boise State Broncos for the first time in program history this Saturday, 3:30 p.m. inside of Notre Dame Stadium. I'm excited to talk about this matchup. It's their annual green out game, which is going to be really, really exciting. Brian and I are both going to be there. Very excited to be up in South Bend once again for a game day. But today, folks, we're talking keys to victory. Part one of today's show, we're breaking down what Notre Dame's offense needs to do to walk away with a win. Part two, we're talking same thing, but the defensive side of the ball. The conversation is going to look a little different, but we like some of these matchups that Notre Dame is gearing up to face on Saturday. Then part three, it's a really fun part of today's show. We're talking game predictions. We're going to give our final scores. We're going to talk about game wreckers and who we think are going to have big games. And then we're going to wrap up today's show talking about some of the other games that are going on throughout college football this weekend. So, Brian, full slate of topics for today's show. I'm ready to rock and roll, man.
I'm ready to go. Missed you guys yesterday, but I'm ready to go now. So apparently we're going to spend time actually talking about how the other opponent is actually going to show up and play. And they actually have guys on scholarship and everything. So, we're not going to just jump on here and say, hey, Boise State sucks. Notre Dame's great. So have a great week where everybody will see you USC week. So, yeah, we're not going to do that. These guys didn't do that yesterday. We're not going to do that today. So if you want to have somebody talk about how the other team sucks, everybody for Notre Dame is awesome. Yeah, I know they're 2-2, but, they're going to murder Boise State, who, yeah, I know they played at Oregon last year. I know they played in the Fiesta Bowl, but they're going to be totally scared of Notre Dame when they come play this game. This ain't the show for you. So if you want to actually talk football and actually talk about the other team and talk about what they're going to do, then this is going to be the show for you. So just letting y'all know this is how this is going to go. We're going to talk ball. We're going to talk about Notre Dame. We're going to talk about Boise State. And if you just want to talk about how Boise State sucks and Notre Dame should win by 50 just by showing up, there's another show for you. This ain't it. This ain't it. But if you want to talk ball because you like to actually, know football and talk football and have some fun talking football and respect the other opponent, and I'm just a little fired up today, Trev, because it's just some of the responses you get to certain things. It's hilarious how there's this group of Notre Dame fans that want to convince themselves that every team that Notre Dame plays sucks. Miami sucked, A&M sucked, Purdue sucked, Arkansas sucked, Boise sucks. But if anyone in the national media says Notre Dame's schedule's soft, these same people, what? What are you talking about? You're a Notre Dame hater. Maybe they just finally started listening to you guys. Maybe. So I'm looking forward to having this show, Trev. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this game. This is going to be a good test for Notre Dame. We're going to find out, a lot more about this Notre Dame team. It's a much better coached football team than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. So we're going to learn a little something, and we're going to learn if Notre Dame can handle success, right? That's what Marcus Freeman has been talking about for 2 years. Can this team handle success? Well, they just whooped a couple people the last 2 weeks. What does handling success looks like? Keep going. Keep it rolling. And we're going to talk about those things today, Trev, because that's what a lot of our keys to victory are going to be about. It's how do you keep this thing rolling? How do you continue playing at a high level? How do you continue going out there and doing what you should do? Because if you are an elite team, which we think Notre Dame should be, then you should beat a team like Boise State convincingly. That doesn't mean that Boise State's not a good football team. Just means you should be an elite football team. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing on Saturday from this team is I'm looking forward to finding out if this Notre Dame football team is capable of. And this is the thing I said in one of my articles. They've had 2 bad games and 2 really good games. So now we find out against Boise, is this just who they are? Is what we saw against Purdue and Arkansas who they are? And they've kind of worked past the issues that they had against Miami and against Arkansas. Are they going to be, a team that kind of reverts back in some degree? Now, reverting back, if you play like you did against Miami and Texas A&M, you're 3-2 after this game is over. You are. But it's how do you look doing it? It's like I feel like Boise's kind of in between Purdue and Arkansas over here, and then Miami and A&M over here. Boise's that middle team. So if this game looks more like it did against Purdue and Arkansas, then we can start feeling more and more comfortable that it's saying, okay, Notre Dame has turned the corner. That team that we saw against Miami, that team that we saw against A&M, that team's gone. That team's gone. Just like this is kind of the time last year, Trev, that we started feeling that way about last year's team. It's okay. Once you beat Louisville and you still had the bad turnovers but you were clearly the better team than Louisville last year. You're like, okay, the Northern Illinois game is behind us. The Miami of Ohio game is behind us. this is who this team is. And then they just kept getting better and better and better and better as the season went on. And there was really no step backs in last year's seasons. Like there was never that after Louisville, there was never that, gee, that looks like the Northern Illinois Notre Dame, or that looks like the Miami of Ohio version of Notre Dame. We never saw that again once we got through Louisville. Well, we're kind of at that same spot now with this team. And last year it was the offense had to improve. And the Louisville game wasn't they figured it all out. What Louisville game was like, okay, yeah, they still have some things to improve upon, but they're going to be all right. And that's what I'm hoping we see from the defense this week. But the defense just kept doing what they were doing all year. And so it's kind of like last year, but on the reverse, where now it's like, hey, offense, just keep doing what you're doing. Let's see the defense take some strides, because if they can take another stride this week, then we say, okay, this is the new normal. It was the Arkansas game is no longer the anomaly defensively. And that's what I'm excited to see this weekend.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, last year's Louisville game was the first time the offense showed the defense, hey, you don't have to hold them to 10 points for us to win today. And that was the biggest takeaway when I go back and look at the Louisville game. But I'm with you completely. Notre Dame should be able to beat Boise State. Doesn't mean that they're not a quality opponent, which is why we're going to dive into keys to victory on both sides of the ball. And contrary to popular belief, what many people believe is the first key to victory on offense being show up and make sure you wake up on time. The first key to victory for Notre Dame on offense on Saturday is going to be to start fast. And again, every week we talk about starting fast, and it's always for different reasons. The last couple of weeks, Notre Dame has gotten a plus from us, and upon further review when we go through starting fast. But Brian, when you talk about starting fast this week at home against Boise State, what does a fast start mean for this game specifically?
Well, it's similar to kind of the Purdue game in that, number one, you want to get your own crowd going against Boise State. You want to kind of get your own crowd going. That's sort of the big picture aspect of it. You want to give your crowd, like within the first 5 minutes of the game kind of starting, or the offense going to feel like, okay, this is that team this is that team we've been waiting on. And as much as I love great defense doesn't excite a crowd as much as great offense. Let's be honest about that. If you go out there and you win a 6-3 game and your defense allows 85 yards, people are not walking out of that stadium like, man, that was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. They're probably pretty cranky about how the defense looked, right? But if you go out and win a game, 45-42, you're concerned about your defense, but you're still more entertained, right? Like good football. And a lot of people in the IB crowd, this is what I love about the IB crowd, is you get the people in there that just want to act like everybody sucks and they just want to complain about stuff. But most of the people in this audience know ball and like to talk ball. There will be conversation about, look, I'm concerned about the defense, man, but that was an entertaining game. Boy, how about that CJ Carr? How about that Jeremiah Love? How about that Jadarian Price kind of conversation? And so you get the crowd excited, but also, Trev, it's about continuing to build on your own confidence. One of the things that impressed me about the offense last week was just how confident they looked. Just even in pregame, Trev, you could just see it. They were just going through business. And it wasn't going through business like methodical or just, like when I used to use that as an insult when talking about Brian Kelly, his business approach, where there was no energy, no fire. It was just another day of work. What I mean is there's purpose to what you're doing, but you're not out there jawing at the other team, that false enthusiasm that some guys have. It was intentional. They were working some quickness. They were sharp. They were getting after it. They were playing with swagger. And then you saw that carry out right into the first drive. And so I think just continuing to build that. But then the final thing is you want to put Boise State behind the 8 ball. You want to make Boise State think, hey, sorry, we can't go on a methodical 10-play drive where we're going to try to shorten the game and make this a lower position game. Because, yeah, you took 6 minutes off the clock, but we took 3 plays to score. So you took 7 minutes off the clock and got 3 points. We just, in 3 plays in a minute and 12, got 7. And the more you score, and this is what we saw last week against Arkansas. Arkansas wanted to run the ball against Notre Dame, and they had 126 yards in the first half. Why didn't they run the ball for more yards in the second half? Because they were down, 42-13? That's why. The more you score, not only do you get more confidence, not only do you give your defense more confidence that, hey, guys, just relax like we talked about last week, but you then take Boise State out of what they want to do. If it's 21-7 and you know, you they've got the ball and you're in the third quarter because you put 3 touchdowns on the board. They just can't say, well, hey guys, let's go on a 8-minute drive. Like, I don't know that they think that they can do that. And so, and if they do, it's like, fine, we're just going to go down and score again. And you got to stop us. So I just think you get Boise State out of what they want to do on offense. I think that's one of the bigger parts of starting fast in this game, Trev.
Yeah, like we talked about last week, and upon further review, there's more than one way to make the opposing offense one-dimensional. And obviously, everybody starts out with the defense. Talk about, hey, take away the run, force them to pass, it's strength of your defense, yada, yada, yada. But like we saw against Arkansas, when Notre Dame starts to hang 42 points on a team in their first 6 offensive possessions of the game, you're at a spot where the offense played a major hand in that. So starting fast is absolutely something that they're going to have to do in this one. Brian, the next one that you had was handle pressure, and I'm curious on which direction you're going to go with this. Are you talking about the big picture game pressure or the literal physical pressure that Boise State brings, or both?
It's the literal pressure. I'm not worried about Notre Dame handling the pressure of the game. I think that was more A&M, and when talk about the offense, that was A&M. I thought even the Miami game, they handled the pressure of the game fine. They didn't execute well. They didn't, always play clean football, but at no point in time in the opener against Miami did I think the moment was too big for the Notre Dame players. I think Ruben Bain was too good for the Notre Dame players at times. I think there were some issues like that, but it was never the moment. I think one thing that we've learned about Marcus Freeman's football teams in the last couple of years is the moment's not going to get to them. They didn't lose to Clemson because the moment was too big. They lost to Clemson because they just didn't play well. They didn't have a lot of fire. This is more about handling the pressure that Boise State is going to bring in this game, Trev. There's 2 reasons why I think Boise State's going to bring a lot of pressure. A, it's what they do. Watch the film. They bring a lot of 5- and 6-man pressures. They don't just sit back all day and say, we're just going to try to cover with 7. They're not going to put their secondary in that position. They're going to bring 5, and they're going to bring 6. And they're going to do zone fires and inside twists. I mean, you see it. You watch the film, Trev. They're going to bring a lot of things at Notre Dame. That's number 1. It's kind of who they are. Number 2, they just watched Purdue and Arkansas bring 4- and 5-man pressures all day and get annihilated by Notre Dame. Absolutely annihilated by Notre Dame. So what's the counter to that? Well, look, Spencer Danielson's not an idiot. Tyler Stockton is not an idiot. Their other co-coordinator, whose name escapes me at the present moment, is not an idiot. They're not watching film saying, hey, athletically, we match up with these guys. I promise you they don't think that. But what they are thinking is, hey, fellas, there's some things this offensive line has struggled with at times. There are things that you want to do to a redshirt freshman quarterback, that Miami did some things where if you can pressure this kid and maybe mix up your looks enough to mess him up, he's going to be able to make some mistakes. I'm not saying CJ is going to do that. What I'm saying is you got a much better shot of doing that than you do of just lining up and saying, hey, we're gonna try to cover and go athlete for athlete. They're going to try to force Notre Dame into mistakes. Now, mistakes are several things, Trevor. It's a 1st and 10 -3 because they brought an overload pressure to a side and you didn't get everybody blocked, and so they tackle you for a -3. It can be obviously there's the no-brainers, turnovers and stuff like that, but it's also you've got Malachi Fields open on a post route, but CJ doesn't have time to step into the throw and he can't get that ball off. You have, Jaden Greathouse open on a slot fade, but CJ Carr gets drilled in the chest or drilled in the face as he's getting ready to throw the football, and he can't get the juice on it, and it's incomplete. Or you've got Jordan Faison coming on a crossing route. He's about to be wide open, but CJ rushes his throw because he's getting pressured, and he misses an open guy. That's how you neutralize the fact that they have better athletes than us. If you're looking at it from a Boise standpoint, is we've got to create negatives and we've got to create mistakes by Notre Dame. If Notre Dame can handle the pressure, and this is threefold. Number 1 is have a game plan designed to beat it. Have it and also have a game plan designed to pick it up, right? Like those 2 things kind of go together. Number 2, handling the pressure is the offensive line limiting mistakes on their part. And then the third part of handling pressure has got to be CJ Carr not letting himself get sped up too much to where he then kind of forces a couple balls. And we've seen him force the balls. He's a redshirt freshman. And he's a gutsy quarterback. He's a confident quarterback. He's going to throw the ball into places sometimes. So the more you can get him to do that, because you've sped up his internal process, the better chance you have of making a mistake. On the flip side, if you're CJ Carr in the offensive line, the better you handle those things, then the more opportunities you're getting the ball out in space. I thought CJ did a pretty good job against Arkansas in those situations. The throw to Eli Raridan was impressive. It wasn't even really a pressure, just somebody got beat. And he just kind of drops it sidearm. And you don't really notice it till you see the video that Notre Dame put out yesterday. And you're like, how did he even get that ball around that guy? Eli Raridan. He's got a special talent. Physically, they're not going to be able to contain him. You've got to mentally get to him. You've got to get to the timing of what he's doing. That's going to be absolutely what Boise State tries to do tomorrow. And if they don't, or Saturday, and if they don't, then Notre Dame will score over 40 points easily in this game, which we'll get to in one of these future keys, Trev. But that's what I mean by that. It's you've got to have a plan from a coaching standpoint, an offensive line standpoint, and a quarterback standpoint to say, we know they're going to heat us up. They're not just going to sit back. What's our plan, and how do we execute it at a high level?
The final key of handling pressure, the only thing that I have to add, because I agree with everything that you said, in 3 of the 4 games, we've watched CJ basically get an intentional grounding call. He'll have to learn, when it comes with maturation, but we're starting to get to that borderline of hey, CJ, sometimes you just have to eat the sack. Going down and flinging the ball behind your head, or when you're almost, parallel with the ground and just flinging it sideways in the hopes of trying to avoid a sack, it's another thing of being able to handle pressure. Because you never know, you don't want to mistake the compound. The ball accidentally goes backwards. Those are the type of mistakes that you want to start to avoid. And he's starting to get into the territory of, hey, you have now started enough games to kind of understand this is something that you should stay away from. It's another aspect to handling that pressure when you start talking about CJ Carr's role in that as well. So I agree. The next key on offense is make it a speed game. And Brian, you and I were talking before, you already mentioned it, but hey, sometimes it's just athlete on athlete. And this is what Notre Dame is going to have to do, because they have an extremely fast offense like they showed this year, and they're going to have to do it again against Boise State.
Boise State is a really well-coached football team. They are. And there's a lot of people that just want to, I'm even engaged in someone on the chat hey, Boise State's not that good. They're not as good as A&M. Hey, I never said they were as good as A&M, number one. But what they are is very well coached. What they are is tough. They're physically tough. They will compete with you. They're not going to back down. They're not going to be afraid of you. What they are not is incredibly athletic. This is not – I've seen Boise State teams with much better athletes on defense than what this team has on defense. Their middle linebacker, you say his name way better than I do, Trev. What's
Marco Notarini?
Marco Notarini. He's a tough, hard-nosed football player. Smart, instinctive, physical, good size. He has zero chance in space against Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So how do you find ways in the run game to get him in space against them? How do you find ways in the pass game to get him in space against them? That's going to be important. Their DBs, their pass defense is it's solid. It's good on paper. It's solid on paper, but they don't have the athletes in the secondary they used to have. They just don't. Spencer Danielson did not inherit a team that's as loaded as what we've seen from Boise State in the past, where they'd have some legitimate P4 athletes in the secondary. They don't have that many. And the one guy that you could argue is a P4 athlete, Jaden Mickey's not playing in this game. They have solid players. There's no doubt. But this is just a different Notre Dame skill talent. It is. This is the best Notre Dame skill talent since 2015. And I would argue that this unit has more depth of talent. There's no Will Fuller at receiver this year, but Notre Dame 1 through 5 is, in my opinion, better than 2015 was through 5. And 2015 was pretty good too. Is Will Fuller, Chris Brown, Amir Carlisle, Corey Robinson, and Torrey Hunter Jr. That was pretty good, but I just think this team depth-wise is even better. That team wasn't as good as tight end once Durham Smythe went down in game 2. It was now you're playing, true freshman Alize Mack. And as much as I love CJ Prosise and Josh Adams, they're not as good as what this duo is. They're just not. And I think CJ Carr is a better player than Deshaun Kaiser. He's different, but he's better. So if this is a game where, if you're Mike Denbrock, how can we make this game be about our speed? How can we make this game be about our athleticism? So whether that's pushing the tempo like you saw last week, I think that would make a lot of sense, Trev, because Boise's, again, they want to get into the right call. They want to make the right checks. They want to do all that. They don't really want you pushing the pace of the game where they just got to line up and play ball. I mean, that's kind of what you do. And so I want to see Notre Dame come out and say, okay, we're going to get you on your heels a little bit. Maybe that means moving the pocket a little bit, where you are able to kind of slow down the rush. That ties into 2. That also ties into 3. You want to do some things in the screen game to try to, again, get isolations, create lanes for your athletes to get through, and those are the type of things. So the reason this is number 3 is, again, it goes back to number 2, beat the, have a way to handle the pressure. That's how Boise's going to try to neutralize number 3. Because if CJ Carr's having to get rid of the ball super quick, here's what happens. That crossing route by Jordan Faison, he hits it, but Boise's safety is driving downhill right on it, and he makes the tackle. Because you couldn't let that play develop. You couldn't let guys get into space. That post route where Malachi Fields is wide open, or that slot fade where Jaden Greathouse smokes a guy, or that deep over route by Eli Raridon where he just outruns the Notarini big time, doesn't work because CJ's got a guy in his face. That's why number 2 is so important. Because if you can handle number 2, Trev, then I think that Mike Denbrock has shown us enough that he knows how to do number 3. And if it becomes a game about our athletes versus your athletes, looking at it from a Notre Dame standpoint, then Boise doesn't have much of a chance. But Boise State knows that, and that's why their game plan is going to be geared towards how do you neutralize that. So this is a big game for the Notre Dame offensive line, a big game, because I think they can run the ball relatively well on Boise, should anyway, but they have not been great handling pressure packages this season. They're going to have to show that they've improved in that area, and I still don't understand why Purdue, especially after what we saw at the end of the half, like, how did Purdue not come out in the third quarter just heat Notre Dame up? Like, both of those defensive coaching staffs coached scared. They knew that Notre Dame had better athletes, and so they were like, "Hey, we're gonna try to do this." They didn't come out and say, "Hey, man, we're gonna try to heat you up." They were afraid of the big plays happening. Well, and they still happened. Boise State's not going to make that mistake. They're too well coached. At least I don't think they're going to make that mistake. They're going to be too well coached. They're going to try to say, we're going to go down swinging. Because we can't run with your athletes anyway, whether it's a pressure or not a pressure. So we might as well try to force you into some mistakes and then get you into 3rd and 13. So now we can play drop 8 and have a better shot of covering everybody.
Making it a speed game also goes back to the first key to victory, starting fast. Mike Denbrock can't wait until the 2nd or 3rd offensive possession to finally start to figure out, okay, we should probably start using our advantage of our athletes on the perimeter, get Jeremiah Love-Jadari more in space. Here's one thing that's crazy. Despite what their first half outputs have been the last couple of weeks, Notre Dame's over-under on FanDuel for first half points is 21.5. I thought that was really, really interesting because they scored 42 first half points against Arkansas on the road, and they scored, 35 against Purdue in the first half? Does that sound right?
The offense only scored 28. As a team, they scored 35.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like the over-under for points scored, that has not – it could be offense, defense, special teams. But I'm just saying in general, I thought that was really interesting that that's the total points that Notre Dame is set at over-under in the first half is 21.5.
Yeah. They've been over that in every game but Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were over that against A&M. They were over that by a lot against Purdue, and then they were double that against Arkansas.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That was one of the first things that I took a look at. Honestly, after their output on offense the last couple of weeks, I thought it was going to be set at 30, if I'm being 100% honest. But, yeah, that's what it's set at, 21.5. But, Brian, the final key to victory that we have on offense is finish.
Yeah, this is a big one for me, Trev, and we haven't really used this one this year. And finish is a lot of things, and there's the big picture things. Finish off drives with touchdowns. I mean, that's a simple one, right? Like, what you don't want to do is early in the game move the ball and then settle for field goals. You want to keep punching that thing in the end zone, which so far this year they've been very good at. I think Notre Dame is they rank pretty high. I have an article on it today where I compare like the Notre Dame offensive kind of situational stats. Notre Dame is 12th in college football in red zone touchdown percentage. They're 14 of 17. I believe, and I can't remember which game it was. I think it was Purdue, but didn't they have a game this year that ended in the red zone? They were in the red zone at the end of a half or at the end of end of the game. Weren't they in the red zone at Purdue at one point in time? And then you had another drive where, well, I mean, it doesn't even have to get into that. 14 of 17 is pretty good in the red zone. And I think this Notre Dame team is getting better and better and better each week in the red zone. And so I just look at this offense and I think that you've got to get touchdowns. That's part of finishing. What you can't do is let up with your mindset against a team like this. You've got to have that we're going to bury you mindset. So I want to see the receivers competing for the football a little better than maybe a couple of them did against Arkansas last week. You know, I want to see that. I want to see Malachi Fields finishing off back shoulders with great catches as he's done all season so far. I want to see Jaden Greathouse finishing slot fades in physically impressively like he's done the last 2 weeks. I want to see Jordan Faison finishing off plays where you're locked in, you're making catches and then you're doing things after the catch. I want to see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price do a good job of finishing off plays. And then finally, and this is the most important thing, I want to see this offensive line finishing off blocks. That's an area where they've been a little up and down this season. Boise State does a lot of line games, Trev, a lot of line games. What's the one thing that Notre Dame has struggled with a little bit this year? Line games. And the athletes they're going to face this Saturday are better than the athletes they faced the last 2 weeks. Boise and Purdue, or Arkansas and Purdue, both kind of went with big defensive linemen and tried to eat up space. That's not what Boise State's going to do. Braxton Feely is a much different type of player than Cameron Ball. Now, we think they're both good. I think we had both of them on our preseason all-opponent defenses. I know I did. I think you had Braxton either on your first or second team, right? They're very different players, however. Jaden Virgin Morgan is a player that's a much better athlete than what Notre Dame has seen the last 2 weeks. Arkansas and Purdue have bigger players. They want to rush you with speed. The kid on the edge that Arkansas had last week is not as good as Jaden Virgin Morgan. What he hasn't done is he hasn't gone off yet this year. You got to make sure this isn't the game that's going to happen. So Anthony Knapp, finish on the edge, right? Like why, take that guy all the way out. Because sometimes Anthony will be engaged and Emil will be engaged and then they'll just lose a guy late. Can't do that this week. In the run game, finish off that double team before you get off to the linebacker. Don't let those guys go through. Keep your head up. Keep your head on the swivel. Finish off your blocking responsibilities. Don't just hit a guy and then lose sight of the twister coming around or the looper coming around that you don't see that drills CJ Carr right in the face. Like, it's about finishing because at the end of the day, you do have better players than they do. You do have better scheme than they do. But if you're not locked in to what you're doing, if you're not, and we've seen this team do this before, they didn't take Miami of Ohio as seriously as they took Texas A&M and Louisville. They didn't take Northern Illinois as seriously as they did Texas A&M. And that caused them to get bit in the face a little bit, bit in the butt a little bit, right? I mean, they weren't as locked in. And here's the thing, Trip, you can't just turn that on in the second quarter. That's about your preparation during the week. And so we're going to find that out very early, but just finishing as a unit, finish off drives, as a line, finish off your blocks, finish off your combo blocks. If you could just move that guy that extra 3 inches to 6 inches at the end of a play, that could be enough for Jeremiah Love to turn a 5-yard gain into 50, or Jadarian Price to turn a 5-yard gain into 50. And so that's what it really comes down to, Trevor, just finishing. And then if you're CJ, just stay locked in and just get the ball where the read is telling you. So that's why I think finishing is big key. And then also, Trev, come out in the second half and put Boise State away the same way you did Purdue. Like, I didn't love the second half against Arkansas. I get it, Trev. You're only up 12 points at halftime against Purdue. You've got to be locked in. It's different. You're up, 29 points. I get it. I'm not even mad at him. As a coach, you get on him in the room, like, come on, you can't do this. But you also know you understand. You've been there when you were a player as a coach. Like, look, dude, you can't replicate that same mindset when it's 42-13 that you did when it was nothing. You just can't. So, but at the same time, you still say, okay, well, this is an area we can get better. Because, yeah, we scored 56, but is 56 good enough for you, Trevor, when we should have scored 70? That's the mindset. This is what I loved about Nick Saban. And I love listening to him after a game that they won convincingly, where he didn't think they played as well as they should have. But they beat a bad Vanderbilt team, 38-0, and he's like, I don't care. We should have beat him 50-0. So, like that to me is a big thing of your mindset of, are you looking at the opponent or are you looking at yourself? And that's ultimately where Marcus Freeman wants to get this team and where Mike Denbrock wants to get this offense, where I don't give a crap about who's on the other sideline. You're being held to the standard of what we talk about. And I don't care if what you did was good enough to beat Boise by 17 points, because we should have beat them by 40. And that's what the great teams have. And that's the mindset that I want to see this offense play with on Saturday. And if you do that, then finishing becomes much easier, because you're treating this game like this is the most important game that we play. Absolutely most important game that we play. And if we don't win this one, it doesn't matter who we play next. So we're going to come out like everything's on the line. And if they can play like that, Trev, and have a plan to handle the pressure, then I think this offense rolls. If they don't, then they'll be sloppy and have enough missed opportunities and mistakes to allow Boise to stay in this game. That's what I think.
You and I see that the same. This needs to be one of those faceless opponent games. Boise State is a team that is good enough and disciplined enough that they can jump on you. I've watched Notre Dame drop games that they shouldn't have in South Bend. But at the end of the day, we were talking before the show across the board on offense and really on defense as well. On paper, this matchup favors Notre Dame. So you need to come out and you need to execute and you need to perform the way that you were coached to do. And I hope to see a little bit of the Marcus Freeman that we saw on the tail end of the 2024 season as well. There'd be games where they would be up by 40 points and then the second team offense, the running joke was, once Notre Dame got rolling, we sit down in a post-game show. It's like, well, really, they won by this much, but, the backups gave up a touchdown at the end of the game. But Freeman wasn't happy about it. Why? Because there was a lapse in the level of execution, or, there were some sloppy mistakes. And so I hope to see more of that too. But you and I see that the exact same.
Well, it's because it says more than just how much better are you than Boise State. It says a lot about who you are as a football team. That you go out there and say, hey, we're going to have sort of that killer instinct, so to speak. And I'm also very curious about this game, Trev, and this is kind of a bit of a wrap-up point, because as good as last year's team was, they were great finishers, but they weren't great starters. This team on offense in 3 games has proven to be great starters, but not necessarily great finishers. Part of that is you didn't finish the Miami game off. You did finish. You did what you needed to do against Texas A&M at the end of the fourth quarter, but you didn't do what you needed to do against Texas A&M at the end of the second quarter, which is partly why they had a shot to win the game at the end, because of the missed kick, right? You get a field goal in the end of the second quarter when you had less than a minute left and you hit that, or over a minute left, and you hit that big play to Eli Raridan. And so didn't finish at the end of the game against Miami, didn't finish at the end of the first half against Texas A&M, and you haven't had a chance to finish the last 2 weeks. You've completely overwhelmed these two opponents. Great starters, but are you also great finishers? And when you're overwhelming teams, that can be a difficult thing to instill in a football team, which is why you have to focus so much on finishing every play like it's your last. Yeah. Every block could be and this is true. When you have Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and CJ Carr in your backfield, literally every block is a potential touchdown block. Every snap is a potential touchdown for you. whether you're at the -1 or +1, this offense can score from anywhere, running or passing. And so you've got to do your job like that's what's on the line every time. That's about finishing. And so I think that's one of the things, if you're looking for where can this offense maybe continue to get better, because I'm going to tell you guys right now, as good as this offense has looked the last 3 games, I mean, even 3 games, because I still think they looked pretty good against Texas A&M, which is what I think is a pretty quality Texas A&M defense. It's not elite, but it's pretty good. It's better than last year. But they haven't peaked yet, as you and I have talked about. So it's about finding those little things that you need to do better and then really harping on those and doing better. And finishing is one of those things. There's been a couple times, even last week, if you really break down the film, you'll see about 7 or 8 blocks where if the offensive lineman would have finished it better, it's a much bigger gain. And I don't mean like they had 7 or 8 blocks where they were about to go for 80. What I mean is that 3-yard gain should have gone for 6. That 3-yard gain should have gone for 12 if you finished your block better. Now, that didn't hurt you last week, but it may hurt you down the road when you're playing a better football team. And that's why it is important in games like this to start, in games like Arkansas and Purdue, to start learning those things. And so that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, if this team can do a better job in that. And if they can, Boise has no chance. But if they don't do well in these areas, then, like, guys, can we be real about something? Notre Dame has lost at home under Marcus Freeman to 3 teams that are worse than this Boise State team.
Significantly. Like, significantly worse.
I'd say 2 of them are significantly worse. I still think that Marshall team in 2022 was a good football team. They weren't as good as Boise, though. This Boise. Not last year's Boise. This Boise. Stanford's not even close to this year's Boise team, and I don't think Northern Illinois is close to this year's Boise team. Trev, I don't think it's close. I think you're right, significant. But you still lost. Mm-hmm. So this team still has to prove. This is another one of those opportunities to prove, like, hey, those things are behind us. Those games are behind us. We're past that as a program. I think this Boise game is an opportunity for that.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk keys to victory on defense. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Vince and I are going live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time for the next edition of the Spread Option. We're going to be going over the games for this week, different props, different lines, some dogs, some drops. So it's going to be a fun one. Happy to be back on air with Vince. That'll be a fun show tonight. So make sure you tune in. But as always, the best way to support what we do here at Irish Breakdown is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we're talking the keys to victory for the Notre Dame defense. This is an interesting conversation because the shining light for Boise State this season has been their offense. First game, they were figuring out what their identity was without Ashton Jeanty as their starting running back. It's the first time they played a game without him in the backfield in 2 years. And as the weeks have gone on, they've started to find a little bit more of an offensive identity. This is kind of that strength versus struggle that we talked about. Notre Dame's defense had a good performance against Arkansas, but they're going to have to build on it. And they're going to have to make sure that they continue ascending. So the first key to victory for this unit, Brian, it's plain and simple. You have to be disciplined. And I think you could take that in a bunch of different directions. But, Brian, key number 1, stay disciplined on defense.
This isn't like a vintage Boise offense, but philosophically, they're very similar to what Boise's always been. And what does that mean? A lot of motions, a lot of shifts, a lot of different personnel groupings. They're going to do a lot of things to create extra gaps in the offensive line for the run game. And by creating extra gaps, so even out of 11 personnel, Trev, they'll put a tight end with a outside receiver, and then they'll bring Latrell Caples and put him in a wing and have him block wide. And what that does is that adds an extra gap to their run game. Sometimes they'll run away from it and then cut back to it. Sometimes they'll run to it. And the whole point of that, Trevor, is the more surface area that we can create from a run game standpoint, the more gaps that we have to make you responsible for, the more opportunities that a team without discipline is able to then go rip off a big play. If you watch the Boise State offense against Appalachian State, this is a perfect example. I didn't do like efficiency numbers, Trev, because I don't don't count another team's efficiency. I don't like get into that. But like if you go look at it, they ran for 152 yards. Boise did. They didn't run the ball well against App State. What they did, however, is take advantage of mistakes by Appalachian State. The one time you make a gap mistake, you get sealed inside, you're going to get beat. And what I thought about doing in this one, Trevor, is I thought about, and this is part of, so this is why I went discipline, is I thought about saying like win the leverage battle. But I decided to go with be disciplined because it's bigger than just that. But this is what we talk about, though. By going extra hats, you run the risk if you don't align properly to it, to the overload looks, you run the risk of a defense of getting basically washed inside, and then that sucker just bounces out with ease. And that's what they did against App State. That's what they did against Air Force. That's what they did against Eastern Washington. And it's not so much about their dudes are better than your dudes. It's about trying to get you into making a mistake. They will hammer you 240. That's what they're going to try to do. I do think Boise State's going to try to shorten this game. I don't think they want to get into a shootout against Notre Dame. And so they're going to be at their pregame or pre-snap movement alignment best against Notre Dame to try to say, we've got to put their defensive line and linebackers into some bad spots where we've got leverage advantages on them, either to get outside or to get some down blocks with some kickouts in hopes of getting up to the linebackers and then kicking out their ends, maybe catch them in a slant or a twist, and then rip off a big run. That's what Boise's going to do. Same thing the pass game. They do a lot of post-snap, and this is why I decided to go, instead of like two different points to put it into one, pass game-wise, Trev, they do a lot of levels concepts, which is something Notre Dame has struggled with this season. They do a lot of post-snap switching, which requires post-snap communication. And that has resulted in the other team turning guys loose. If you're disciplined in how you go at Boise State, you should not only just slow them down, but you can hold them under 20 points. No question. But at the end of the day, you just have to avoid those big plays that they're going to try to create. And when I mean big plays, I don't just mean 20-plus yard gains. I mean that 8-yard gain on 1st and 10 that should have been a 2-yard gain, because your backside linebacker didn't hit the proper gap, or your edge has got out leveraged. Your safety run fit inside because he didn't recognize they had 2 extra gaps on the outside. Those are things that I talk about when it comes to discipline that are going to be important. When you're a defensive back, don't go underneath a blocker. Go over top and force the guy back inside. All those things are about discipline that are going to limit Boise's chances for big plays. Because if this comes down to Boise's going to go on a bunch of 8-9 play drives, they have no chance, because I don't know that they're good enough up front, and I don't know if they're good enough at the skill positions to just make those type of drives happen like they could last year. And so you've got to make sure that it's not about mistakes, because, Trev, we saw this even Penn State and Oregon. You'd have it perfectly schemed up. Everybody does their job, but Ascengenti would just make somebody look foolish and turn a 2-yard gain into a 30-yard gain. They don't have those type of backs this year. Their backs are good, but they're like really good G5 backs, solid, power 4 backs. Last year, they had the best running back in college football, and one of the best of the last, 10, 20 years, the way he played last year. They don't have that. So if you're disciplined, you're going to keep their run game in check. But you're also going to limit the big plays in the pass game. And it's the big plays that concern me. But the reason that I went with be disciplined instead of big plays is because it's not about the big play. They're not going to create big plays because they're so good. They're going to get those big plays because you make mistakes. And then the final piece of being disciplined is don't give them easy first downs. Don't give them easy yards. Don't jump off sides. They're going to try to get you to jump off sides. They'll go under center. They'll do hard cadences. They'll do all those type of things. Don't have some dumb penalty that gives them a first down, some illegal hit to the head, something like that gives them cheap yards. That's the final piece of discipline is, yes, do your job, do it the right way. Don't look for the big play. Just, aggressively do your job, but then don't do anything that gives them, make them earn everything. Don't give them yards. Don't give them points. Don't give them opportunities. Don't, have a third down converted, covered, but because you don't trust your technique or do what you're taught to do, you end up holding in a situation you have no reason to hold. And next thing you know, it's first down, they go down and score, and then they took another 4 minutes off the clock. It's that kind of stuff, Trev. It's just be disciplined. If you be disciplined and you execute your next point, which I know you'll lead us to, then again, I don't know that Boise State has much of a chance in this game.
Oh, agreed. And talking about not having a chance in this game, if Notre Dame can build on what they did a little bit against Purdue, a little bit more against Arkansas, hopefully they can start to put it together here against Boise State at home. It's be aggressive. And you and I are going to be shouting this from the rooftops until we see an entire game that's been executed well and has been aggressive for the majority of the time that they're on the field. It's been one of the things that's still been missing. Big picture, when we dove into it and upon further review that's on the message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com, that was still one of the things. Despite holding Arkansas to 13 points, they still weren't as aggressive as we would have liked to see and what they need to be moving forward. So that's a huge key for this game.
It is. And this is about this game and moving forward, Trev. And I thought about putting this one first, but I was like, no, I think the discipline thing is more important. But I just don't want to see you sit back against Boise because they will hammer you. This is a pretty good offensive line. What's funny is I watch them on film, and I don't think they're that big. They don't look that big on film. And then you look at them, they're like 315, 312, 320, and you're like, okay, maybe they're a little bigger than I thought. But like, they're tough. They're not super athletic up front. They're strong. You know, they'll battle. But if you just sit back and just kind of play a standard defense like we've seen a lot of the time, they're going to run the ball on you. I mean, they are. They're different backs than the kids that Arkansas faced. I'm not worried about the quarterback run like you were last week. Maddox Madsen can tuck the ball and scramble, move the chains, and that fine. But he's not a guy that you're like, hey, we lost the game because of Maddox Madsen's legs, like you could have to Taylon Green or even Ryan Brown to a degree. But they will run it on you. They will gap scheme you, counter you, and just blow you off the ball and run it at you if you're just sitting back playing passive football. Their linebackers or their linemen do a really nice job of getting up to the second level, coming off combo blocks, and getting to linebackers that aren't aggressive. If you want to attack this run game, you've got to hammer it. And this isn't about necessarily blitzing, and it's a mindset that will include that. Let Drake Bowen and Kingston, Viliama Asa, and Jaden Alsbury, and Madden Faremo, and Jalen Steed attack downhill. It's kind of similar to the offensive point. You're a way more athletic team than them. Take advantage of it. Your defensive line is more athletic than their offensive line. So, take advantage of it. Attack downhill. Be more aggressive going after the ball because this is a kid that will throw the ball up, and we'll talk more about that in point 3. But this is a kid that will make mistakes. But if you're not aggressive attacking the football, if you're not aggressive in your pressures, those mistakes won't be as frequent and they won't be as damaging to Boise State. So a big part of this thing for me, Trev, is I just want to see a team that plays that mindset. And it goes beyond Boise. This is also about saying, hey, we've learned from our mistakes. We know we can't be that team anymore. It's not like my fear is that last week was you are learning the defense better, which allowed you to make some mistakes, limit some mistakes. Arkansas made their mistakes. You took advantage of a team that you have better players than, but I don't know if that would have translated as well if they were playing a better team or if their offense wasn't having to play from behind so much like they were in that game. And that's my concern. And so this is an opportunity to still say, hey, look, no, we're gonna ramp it up a little bit more. We may not blitz like we did last year, but we're gonna be more aggressive going at this offense. If you sit back and let Boise State dictate the tempo and pressure to you, they will run the ball on you. And that leads to point 3. But I want to get to finish this one off, Trev, because I want to get your thoughts. I think this is more than just about Boise. This key right here about being more aggressive, this is more than just about Boise. This is about setting a tone for the rest of the year on defense and getting back to who this team should be. You want to show me that this is the Notre Dame defense? Then let these kids attack. Let these kids fly around. Let these kids fly to the football and stop having them go backwards all the time or stagnant all the time. because you want to have all the checks. You want to have all the things. Let these kids attack. Let these kids fly to the football. Be aggressive. It's not just about this week, though. It's this week leads into the rest of the year. Because if you try, look, let's just be real. USC will not be held to 13 points if you repeat your performance from last week. I don't know that NC State will. So you've got to still – last week was a good first step. Now you got to take another step. Last week was not your we've arrived moment.
Yeah, I think you hit all the main points, man. I mean, look, this is the one aspect of their defense that has been lapsed. And honestly, the biggest disappointment going so throughout the season. You're going to face quarterbacks down the road that can pick you apart. Look, I'm sorry. Respect to Taylor Green and Marcel Reed. They don't have the accuracy to pick you apart. They don't. You could execute zone perfectly, but what do good, accurate quarterbacks do? Find holes in the zone. Why? Because there's holes in the zone. Sometimes football is not that complicated. Taylor Green's not that guy to do that. Marcel Reed's not that guy to do that. Jade Maeva can. Dylan Lonergan can. Eli Holstein, if he's protected, could. And so it's just, you have all of these quarterbacks that are coming up on your schedule that this is why it's so important to build on. And yes, it'd be nice to see it against Boise State. And I'm not naive to the fact that Notre Dame doesn't have to play overly aggressive to beat Boise State by double digits. They don't. They could play exactly how they played against Purdue and just come out and play a vanilla defense and not get hands on receivers, not try to redirect anybody. They could do something dumb like try to drop Donovan Heinisch into coverage, and they could do all that stuff, and they could beat Boise State by 2 touchdowns. Not naive to that fact at all, but it's about setting the precedent moving forward, and that's something that they're going to have to do. But, Brian, one thing that they are going to have to do specific to this game is they're going to have to find a way to stop the run. Big picture numbers in the box score against Arkansas, Notre Dame was able to stop the run when you just look at the total output. But then when you add a little bit of context in there and you know that Arkansas had 126 yards at the end of the first half, it was more so Notre Dame's offense taking Arkansas's run game out than the Notre Dame defense taking Arkansas's run game out. And, you know, you look at a quarterback like Maddox Madsen, he is not somebody that's going to be able to drop back and pick you apart on straight dropbacks. You go and you look at some of the numbers, and on straight dropbacks, he's completing about 58% of his passes. But when Boise State's been able to run the football, when they've been able to establish the line of scrimmage, on play-action passes, he's completing close to 64% of his passes. That's what Boise State wants to do on offense, and Notre Dame is going to have to make them one-dimensional within that, and they're going to have to stop the run.
There's a lot of things, Trev, when you look at Maddox, you look at this offense, and it looks very different, like statistically, than what we saw last season. I mean, in each of the last 3 games, Boise's been over 300 yards passing. It looks great, and they've got good skill. I mean, Latrell Capers is a good football player. Chris Marshall's a former top recruit that was at SEC schools. Matt Lauder's one of the better tight ends they're going to face this year, and their running backs are weapons out of the backfield. And their scheme is good. They've got good scheme. I mean, these are good football coaches. But to your point, Maddox Madsen's not that guy that's going to sit back in the pocket and rip you up and just for 60 minutes. I just don't see it. I mean, he's a nice quarterback and he can, you know, make some plays, and his numbers look great. I mean, threw for 321 against App State, threw for 307 against Eastern Washington, threw for 276 against Air Force. I think he's more the kid that we saw against South Florida. You know, like made some big throws against Penn State last year. Like, he's a gutsy kid. But he also threw 3 picks, and because they forced him into. They said, look, Ashton Genty's not going to beat us. If you're going to beat us, you got to beat us with Maddox Madsen. And he made a couple throws. He had a really, I think it was a corner route, maybe it was a seam to Matt Lauder for a big play last year. Like, he'll make a couple of those. But I can live with that. I've said this before. I'll live with a couple big plays being given up as long as you don't let them turn into touchdowns. It's the constant 10s to 12s that you're giving up that's hurt this team so much. But I just look back and say, if you're going to make Maddox Madsen beat you, and then make him beat you down the field because you're being more aggressive, you're taking away the quick game. Because if you're just going to let him nickel and dime you all day, he can do that. Anyone can do that. But if he's going to try to beat you down the field, that now you're playing in, they're playing into your hands. Because you talk about, pure drop backs and all this other kind of stuff. I'll give you, I got some numbers for you too, Trev. Maddox Madsen on throws beyond 20 yards past the line of scrimmage is only 37.5% completion rate on the season. He's 6 of 16. On throws from 10 to 19 yards, he's 19 of 37, which is only good for a 51.4% completion rate. And if you look at it from all throws 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, he's only completing 47.2% of his passes. That's it. And so if you can force him to throw the ball down the field, then you're going to win. And hey, this is not an anomaly that, let's say, because he was really bad against South Florida. Well, okay, yeah. Guys, he was only at 58.3% on 10 to 19 last year, and he was at 35.3% on deep balls last year. He's actually slightly better on deep balls this year than he was last year. But he's still in the 30s in both regards. And if you look at last year, Trev, he completed 85 out of 166 throws beyond 10 yards. That's 51.2%. That means if that ball has to go more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, over the last 2 years, it's a 50-50 proposition for Boise State.
Yeah, coin flip if it's getting completed.
Beyond
much.
10 yards.
Yeah.
CJ Carr's at like 64% on throws of beyond that. I'm sorry. Beyond 10. But he's like in the high 60s, 70s in 10 to 19. Now, behind the line of scrimmage this year, he's 90%. That in that range from 0 to 9, he's a 70.6%. So he's over about an 80% passer, high 70% passer if you let him throw a quick game. Why would you let him throw a quick game?
Which goes back to our second key to victory is being aggressive. If you let Maddox Madsen, if it's 3rd and 5 and you're dropping your closest defender to the football to 7 yards of depth, it's exactly what they want. It's exactly what they want. If you're able to be aggressive, stop the run, this Boise State offense is going to have a really hard time moving the football. But, Brian, you're 100% right. He's somebody that is not comfortable pushing the ball down the field. He's not effective pushing the ball down the field. I mean, through 4 games, he has 6 completions of 20 yards or longer. That's one of those, it's just like, that's not a strong suit of his. They don't ask him to do it a whole lot. So, absolutely a major key to this game. I couldn't agree more, Brian.
I got to tell you, Trevor, if we come into this game and we watch them just kind of go out and do exactly what you're talking about, I'm gonna lose it. I don't know how you watch this football team and say, hey, let's let them complete these easy throws. Let's let them hit these crossers. Like, no, this is a guy that over the last 2 years is a 50-50 quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball past 10 yards. If you don't do things schematically to force him to throw the ball past 10 yards, then you're not a very good football coach.
Yeah.
And so that's why I hope that we're going to see Chris Ash be more aggressive and say, hey, look, there are some quarterbacks that are just, man, you just can't let them. Like, if I'm playing Notre Dame, I'm not daring CJ Carr to throw the ball down the field. Yeah, I'm just not. Boise State, I am.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to do that because he's just not good at it. And so I just make him beat you.
One thing that I thought was interesting that I brought up yesterday, I was seeing if it was changed at all, but it hadn't. And on FanDuel, you still can't bet on any Boise State running back rushing props. Still. And Maddox Madsen's over-under passing yards, I believe, is at 215.5. But you still can't bet on on FanDuel, you can't bet on a single Boise State running back to get any yards. You can bet on them to get touchdowns, but not one of them. I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Trevor. I'm really curious to see, what Notre Dame is able to do against him this game. I'm really curious to see because it's going to tell us a lot about, are you really coaching to your opponent and to your players? This is also a kid, Trev, that you talk about. His completion percentage in a clean pocket is 67%, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. His completion percentage when he's under pressure is 34.5 under pressure this season. Last season, in a clean pocket, Maddox Madsen, 67.4% completion rate, 19 touchdowns, 3 picks. Last year, Maddox Madsen, when under pressure, completed 42.9% of his passes, 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. It's all right there in front of you. In 20 career starts, like over 20 career starts, this is who this kid has been. And so I just need to see him. The year before, 2023, completed 45.5% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 1 pick on plays where he was under pressure. Like, make this kid beat you. Because if it comes down to Maddox Madsen versus the Notre Dame defense, and that's the only chance you have of winning is Maddox Madsen going off, you're either not going to lose that football game, or you just don't have the right people running your defense. And so if I'm going to lose to Boise State, I'm going to make Maddox Madsen beat me, because he can't.
Last key to victory that we have on the defensive side of the ball, Brian, is tackle well. Make them go on long drives. I think tackling for Notre Dame has steadily improved over the last couple of weeks, but it has to continue this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. It really has, because it was bad the first couple games. I mean, especially in game 2. They were good against Purdue, but we said, hey, look, does Purdue really have the playmakers to make you pay in that regard? Tackling was good for the most part last week. You had a couple missed tackles in the box on some short yardage runs and some bad fits. But, did Arkansas really have a bunch of guys can make you miss? Not really, outside of their quarterback. Boise does. They have more of that. They have more guys that can kind of make you miss. Their running backs can make you miss in space. Their receivers can make you miss in space. Not like, oh, my gosh, this looks like A&M all over again. They're not that at all. But they're more dynamic than what the Arkansas guys had in space last week in the backfield.
Yeah.
Receiving core is comparable in that regard. I think this is a similar receiving core to what you faced the last couple weeks, because the receiving cores for your last 2 opponents were pretty good. Yep. Purdue had good receivers, and Arkansas had really good receivers. When I look at Boise, I look at Latrell Capers, I look at Chris Marshall, and I look at the tight ends and say they've got pretty good weapons in the pass game. With a better quarterback, these guys would be pretty, I'd be much more concerned about their pass game. Like, my whole thing about their pass game is Maddox Madsen. And the concern I have, and we didn't bring this up, Trev, I should have mentioned this. Their tackles their left tackle's as good as any left tackle they're going to face this year, especially in pass pro. That's a specialty. They've been pretty good in pass pro this year for the most part. And so, you got to get some pressure on them. But when they're going to get the ball in space, back to the tackling thing, you've got to bring them down. You can't give them up. You can't give up the cheap yards. You can't let a 2-yard gain turn into a 6-yard gain. You can't let a 6-yard gain turn into a 20-yard gain. You've got to make Boise earn every play, because at the end of the day, Trev, the reason I make that point about make them go on long drives is because I don't think they're good enough to do that. I don't think they're good enough to just go on a bunch of 7-8 yard play drives to beat you. A&M wasn't good enough to do that. If you would have taken away just 3 of A&M's big plays in that game, you win that game. You just take 2 of them away. If you could just tackle that guy at midfield, you don't know that they're going to go down and score. We don't know that. I'm thinking of their first touchdown of the game. You just tackle them at midfield. Who knows if A&M goes down and scores, and who knows what happens in that play. So those are the things you look at and say, I want to see this team do a better job of, or making sure they continue to do a better job of tackling well in space. And when you get shots on Maddox Madsen, bring him down.
Agreed. Well, folks, that is going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We are getting ready to talk game predictions and game records. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. That notification bell is hit so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, it is game prediction time here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. And we are now going to give our predictions for the Notre Dame-Boise State game that's happening this Saturday inside of Notre Dame Stadium at 3:30 p.m. This is always a fun segment. I love talking about how we think this game is going to go out, giving final score predictions, talking game wreckers. It's one of my favorite segments that we do throughout the week. Brian, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off here. It's talking about these game predictions. I'll give you guys my final score first. I have Notre Dame winning this game 51-17. I always hesitate to predict any team to go over 50. I think this offense is absolutely humming. And the defensive side of the ball for Boise State is the one that has really, really struggled. They give up a lot of explosive plays. And that's something that Notre Dame's offense has feasted on so far this year. On paper, like I've talked about in the previous two sections, this matchup favors Notre Dame across the board on paper. Now they have to go out and execute offensively. They have to stay focused. They have to make sure that they're honed in on the task at hand. And then defensively, you have to continue progressing. You can't do what a lot of fans are doing and just hang your hat on, hey, they held Arkansas to 13. This defense is back. Just do what you did every single week, because there were some mistakes that Arkansas did that were self-inflicted that also led to them only scoring 13 points. But right now, there's no doubt about it. This offense is really, really hot. They haven't punted in 2 games. We talk about what Notre Dame's defense is up against. This is what Boise State's defense is up against. Maddox Madsen doesn't do a good job of handling physical pressure as well as Taylon Green did. And when I mean, I don't mean as a passer. I mean, he doesn't have the escapability that Taylon Green does. Taylon Green was 6'6", 235 pounds. Maddox Madsen is 5'10", 200 pounds. So it's a different level of athlete that you're going against. We'll get more into it when I go over some of my game records, but I think the D-line should have a good game this week. And it's honestly kind of consistent with what we've seen them do, but I think this might be one of those performances where they kind of put it together against a good Boise State defensive or offensive line. And I do think that the defense continues to build on their performance from last week. Overall, I think the offense keeps rolling. So I have Notre Dame winning 51-17.
So, Trev, you think, just to make sure we're clear here, what you're basically saying is you think that this offense is basically it's going to just steamroll Boise. Tell me why. I'm not arguing. I'm just tell me why. Like, what's the matchup that you look at and say, okay, this is why I think they're going to hang 51 points on a Boise State team that, I mean, even against some of the better teams they've played in recent years. They gave up 37 to Oregon last year, 31 to Penn State last year, 34 this year. They haven't given up. I mean, you haven't seen them give up. I'm trying to go back and look when the last time Boise State gave up even 40 points in a game. I'm trying to find it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it could certainly happen. I'm trying to get into some more of the Nevada. Here we go. I found it. Nevada 2021. It's the last time Boise State gave up over 40 points in a game. So what is it about the matchup? What is it that you think is, or is it just that this team is just too hot right now on offense?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. I mean, I think one of the benefits of them playing Oregon as early as they did last year is they didn't find their footing. If Notre Dame was playing Boise State in week 2, I would not project them to get 51 points.
Okay.
Some of it's a little bit of a recency bias. I watched this team go hang the most amount of points a non-conference opponent in the SEC went and hung on an SEC opponent on the road in 20 seasons. That's something that just doesn't happen all the time. There is not a single matchup across the board that remotely favors Boise State, especially from a skilled position standpoint, with all due respect to the players that they have. There's not a single cornerback on their roster that covers Malachi Fields one-on-one. There's not. There's not a single linebacker that keeps up with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in space. They have quality players. But what we've talked about at the start of the season is, look, this Notre Dame team, this Notre Dame offense has the potential to be elite.
Sure.
Now, I was in the camp of I got to see it first, and now I've seen it. I have seen people not be able to hang with Eli Raridan. Ty Benefield has given up. I mean, last season, man, he's kind of picking up where he left off from a coverage standpoint. Mike Denbrock has done a really good job, like we saw from that throwback screen. He's done a really good job of using defense's aggression against them so far this season, especially the last couple of weeks. You get somebody like Ty Benefield biting hard downfield on a play-action pass, Eli Raridan's going to be running with nobody close to him up the seam.
Yep.
And compounded on top of that, I just think that Boise State's defense is the weak link on the team, because one of them has to be, and it's clearly not their offense. I see this playing out very similar to the Arkansas game in that Notre Dame's offense forces Boise State to be more one-dimensional. And like we just talked about, if you put Boise State in a position where Maddox Madsen has to start pushing the ball down the field to win game, because even if it's, say, like 35-10, dink and dunk passes aren't going to get you back in the game. I think they're going to get a couple of turnovers. I have Notre Dame winning this one big.
I think for that to happen, it's going to have a lot more to say with the Notre Dame defense than it does Notre Dame offense.
Okay.
And that's why we're not too far off. I have it 41-10. I have Notre Dame winning 41-10. I have them covering. And the problem that I still see is as you mentioned, Arkansas did shoot themselves in the foot last week at times. Did Notre Dame do some better things? Of course they did. We broke it down upon further review. But did Arkansas go out last week and just get shut down by Notre Dame and just everything Notre Dame did was just, there's nothing they could get going? No, that's not really how the game went down. Notre Dame absolutely did some things to get some key stops. We broke down the play on their second series where they 2nd and 5 tried to run a throwback wheel to the running back, and Kingston was all over it. And then Adon did a great job on that play. So Notre Dame made stops. They got better. But I don't think this team quits the way that Arkansas did last week. And I think this team has got more confidence than Arkansas had last week. And I think Arkansas, I watched them play that just going through pregame. They had a lot of false enthusiasm going into that game. And the minute Notre Dame kind of went down and scored on, they were like, okay, we're done. Just, we got no shot. And so I look at it like this, Trev, is if the Notre Dame defense can play the way it's capable of, I think your score might actually be not only close, but you might undersell it a little bit, because I don't know that Boise can get to 17 if this defense plays the way they're capable of. I'm going 41-20 because I do think Boise's going to be able to run the ball a little bit early. They're going to have some gash plays. They're going to hit a couple shots, and they're going to move the ball, and that's going to limit possessions for the Notre Dame offense early on. And then I think Notre Dame kind of puts it away in the second half. Notre Dame is capable of scoring 41 points against Boise State by the end of the third quarter, if not sooner. Like, it's that big of a – I don't think people understand nationally. I think Notre Dame fans have started to get it, which is why we've seen a complete 180 from some Notre Dame fans from 2 weeks ago, to where now it's like this guy should be in the Heisman contention. They're going to score 50 on everybody. And it's just a completely different dynamic, because I think what people are watching on Saturday is like, guys, these guys are freaking dudes, and it's all over the place. I mean, you mentioned Eli Raritan. 2 weeks ago, we watched this offense score 49 offensive points, and he didn't catch a pass. You know what I mean? Like, and they didn't even try to throw him a pass. He didn't even get a target in that game. He blocked his butt off. We didn't see Jaden Greathouse do a whole lot that game. But we saw Malachi go off. We saw Faison go off. We saw the running backs go off in the run game. This past week, Eli's making plays. Malachi's making plays. Faison's making plays. Greathouse made a big play. Love and Price are making big plays. Like, who do you stop? Who do you defend? How are you going to keep this? Like, how do you keep this offense down? You go with their offensive line with a bunch of things to try to create mistakes, and you try to get the redshirt freshman quarterback to make mistakes. And then the other thing you do is don't let him get into the rhythm. What's the best way to keep Notre Dame out of rhythm? Don't let him be on the field. And that's what Boise State's going to do. They're going to try to slow the game down, limit possessions, and wear the Notre Dame defense down. I don't know that they're going to be able to do it for 60 minutes, but I'm not someone who is going to ignore the first 3 games and pretend like Arkansas is the new reality until I see it over the course of a couple games. And Boise will be a nice step in the right direction. But I need to see it. So I'm 41-20. I don't think this is a game. Like you said, I think this offense is clicking. When you've done something 3.5 games, because we saw it in the second half against Miami as well. As CJ Carr's gotten more and more comfortable, this offense has just looked, pretty ridiculous. And remember last year when you and I kept saying, guys, this receiving core is better than people think it is. They're getting open. They're just not getting the ball. Well, this is an even more talented version of that. And what I mean by that is Mike Denbrock's always been good at scheming guys open. on top of having great talent. He's always been good about scheming guys open and putting defenses in binds. It's not like he schemed Arkansas to say, we're going to get Will Pauling to creep behind the defense. What I'm saying is he does things that put defenses in binds, that if a quarterback is willing to spread the ball around, and here's the one area where Jaden Daniels and CJ Carr have a lot in common. Jaden Daniels ran the offense. Now, the way that Mike Denbrock designed the offense, it meant that Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were going to get a lot of touches. But when you go back and watch that LSU offense in 2023, Jaden Daniels rarely forced the ball to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Kyron Lacey and Mason Taylor also had over 30 catches that year. You had Chris Hilton had 13 catches for 225 yards. Josh Williams had 14 catches out of the backfield that year at running back. Him and Logan Diggs combined for over 20 catches. So it was, hey, we're going to spread the ball around. And CJ's very good at that. Riley would kind of lock in on certain guys. CJ is more, I'm going to kind of go with the read to a degree. And so I think this offense can move the ball on anybody as long as they can get into a rhythm and the offensive line can hold up. So I'm not worried about this game offensively. The only thing that concerns me is, as I said, can Boise State create enough mistakes from Notre Dame, missed opportunities, turnovers to make this a closer game? But the reason I'm at 41-20, again, it just comes down to I need to see it more from the defense. And this is a very good Boise State offensive line and a more explosive backfield. There's a couple runs that Arkansas missed last week that I think could have gone for bigger plays with more athletic backs, and Boise has those kind of backs. Their three backs are good football players. They're not Ashton Genty. They're not in the same universe as Ashton Genty. They're good football players. And I just need to see the defense put it together again. And until I see that more consistently, then I'm gonna be here. But I think your score is more than possible. I'm kind of turning into Trevor a little bit. Like, I'm gonna show me with the Notre Dame defense. They got to show me they can keep another team under 20 in this particular game, because I don't know that the offense is good enough. And I think you would agree with your score, Trev, because I don't think you're predicting Notre Dame only score 9 points in the second half. I don't think the mismatch is such that Notre Dame's going to score 42 again in the first half. So if the defense is giving up 13 at halftime, then it could be closer than to the like what it was against Purdue. Like, we're feeling great about this team now because of the last game and a half. There was a lot of upset people in our chat at halftime of the Purdue game. Like, how's this only a 12-point game? And so I just still need to see that. But it's like I said last week, when this team plays good football on both sides of the ball, there's not an opponent on the schedule, with all due respect to USC and NC State and Navy and Pitt and teams like that. There's not a team on the schedule, including Boise, that has any chance of being within 10 points of Notre Dame if they play their game on both sides of the ball. That's how talented this team is. I just need to see the defenses actually changed, as opposed to just a slight adjustment for a game against a team that was clearly ready to quit on their coach. They're not quitting on Spencer Danielson. And that's the difference. What say you about that, Trev?
Oh, I think that's totally fair. I mean, look, I saw Boise State scoring 17, and it's not like a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game when like the third stringers are in or anything like that. I see Notre Dame in this one, for my score prediction, to have a really big third quarter. Like, it's one of those where it's like, okay, like Notre Dame is handily in front going into the half, but it's closer than what it should be. And the third quarter is the one where it's like, all right, like it's time to put the nail in the coffin. Because one thing that we have seen from this defense consistently is the fact that they are good in the third quarter for whatever reason. Now, one light, it's teams continuously go out and make mistakes against Notre Dame's defense in the third quarter. But, I mean, Miami scored 7. I don't think Texas A&M scored in the third. Purdue, I think, had a field goal. I still get that game mixed up because of the weird halftime. Like, because it was like, yeah, that game messes with me.
Purdue did not score again until the fourth quarter.
Okay.
It was 35-23 at halftime. I'm with you, Trev. because of the halftime was a commercial break.
Yeah. I like
you kind of think that first drive of like the second drive of the second quarter after the break was the touchdown drive, because they held them to a field goal in the first drive. It was the end of the one drive. And then they went down and scored on the next drive after the kick return. Then halftime, and then Notre Dame started shutting them down. So it felt like it was a second half score, but it was not. A&M only kicked a field goal in the third quarter.
That's right.
The A&M only scored 13 points in the second half. That's the thing about Notre Dame is, the exception of Miami, they've been a much better second half team. I just think part of that, Trev, in my opinion, is because the offense puts teams so far behind, it gets them
100%.
out of the opponent out of their game plan.
And
I don't know that it's like, because we talked about the A&M game, they only scored 3 points, but that's as much because Marcel Reed can't throw a go ball as it is anything else. Because he had two guys wide open,
100%.
and I mean, for big plays. But I just think that the offense is just able to put pressure on people to where you just can't go out and, if your game plan is like, if Notre Dame's up, let's say 35-23 at halftime against Boise, and then comes out in the second half and gets the ball first and goes down and scores like they did Purdue, Purdue's done. I mean, Boise's done, because everything they want to do game plan wise is out the window. Okay, fine. You want to go on another ball control 7-minute drive when we're up 42-23 in the third quarter? Go for it. Because you're going to lose this football game. They have to get out of what they want to do. The reason A&M was able to make some of those plays in the second half is because what they wanted to do to kind of take the lead is what was working, throwing the ball down the field. Boise doesn't have Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. I like Latrell Capers and Chris Marshall. They're good football players. They're not They don't have Mario Craver's dynamic athleticism and Casey Concepcion's speed.
No.
They just don't. And Notre Dame doesn't have Carson Hobbs and Jalen Stroman in the starting lineup anymore. That matters. Even without the scheme changing at all, that matters.
Yeah.
So I hope your prediction comes true, because if they go out and annihilate Boise State like this, which they're capable of, that's going to tell me something. Because I'm not someone who sits there and is like, Boise State sucks. You should beat them by 40 just by showing up. No. I can tell you guys that Trevor and I have talked a lot about Boise State. His 51-17 prediction is Trevor saying this Notre Dame team is going to arrive this weekend. That's what he's telling you. Because he doesn't have this view of Boise State's this garbage G5 team that Notre Dame's just going to steamroll. So I love that. And I hope that you're right. And I think so too, but just maybe not quite to the degree defensively
Totally
that you do. But we're only 3 points off total. I just think that's going to be more of Boise limiting possessions and things like that. So it's capable of being a blowout, but I think it's a big state. If they're able to win the game the way that you predicted, or even if they win the way that I predicted, that's a good step in the right direction. But if they win the way that you predicted, or the way that they're certainly capable of winning it, because it could even be worse than that. It could look like the Arkansas game if Notre Dame's really cooking on both sides of the ball. Because to your point, Trevor, I think you nailed it. I think they can get scores on defense in this game, because if the defense, if I knew, let's say that I had a source tell me, and they didn't, this is 100% made up. Let's say a source reached out to me and said, hey, man, I've been in practice the last 2 days, and they are heating up. They're going to heat Boise State up this weekend. They're going to go, they're triggering the nickel, the backers. They're going to go after Boise State. I'm going to do this. Me cancel out my score prediction here, and I'm gonna. They're not scoring 20 points on this Notre Dame defense if I thought that Chris Ash is going to play the game the way it should be played.
Yeah, and this game also screams tip passes to me. Yeah, from the D line
and stuff.
Yeah,
Here's a 5'10" quarterback
going up
with a low arm angle,
going up against D linemen like Onye and Rubio and Bryce Young and Boubacar, who just have the longest arms I've ever seen. You know what I mean? So. But hey, at the end of the day, man, we both have Notre Dame covering. Like you said, right now on FanDuel, Notre Dame is 20.5-point favorites. And so we both have them covering. And hopefully, and look, like you said, I'm going to be happy with either one of the score predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it, too, is another thing that fed into my score prediction. I'm interested to see what Boise State is against not Eastern Washington and Appalachian State And so there's a bunch of moving pieces. So it's like, what takes today? Is Boise State more of who they were against Eastern Washington and Appalachian State? Are they more like they were against South Florida? Is Notre Dame's defense more like what it was against Arkansas, or more like what they were against Purdue? Which one takes the day?
Boise State is a lot like this whole – people will talk about the South Florida game. Okay, cool. So are we going to assume that Notre Dame is the team that they played against Miami because they haven't looked like that since? No, teams get better. That was a bad game for Boise. Yeah. It wasn't just – if they played again 10 times, South Florida might win 6 or 7 of those games maybe. Maybe. They're not beating them 34-7 again. Like that I'm confident of. Just like if Notre Dame and Miami played again in 2017, they're not losing 41-8 every time. Sometimes games just kind of get away from you. That's how football works. But you also got to say, like, look, they've played one competent offense since then, and that was Air Force. And Air Force went for over 500 yards almost 500 yards. And actually, they were over 500 yards, right? They had like 260 rushing, 240 passing. They were over 500 yards in that game. And so, like, that's the thing for me is I don't think this offense is great. I think what's the thing for me is I think their defense is capable of playing a lot better than it has. I think their offense is what it is. Like, this is who they are on offense. I think if they played South Florida this week instead of Notre Dame, I think Boise State scores 24 to 27 points on South Florida. They might still lose, but I think they scored 24 to 27 points. Just like I think if Notre Dame and Miami played this weekend instead of week 1, I think that game looks a lot different. But that's not life. But you can't just keep assuming that just because you were that way in week 1 or week 3 that you're going to be that way the rest of the year. If Notre Dame would have played in weeks 5 through 12 like they did in weeks 2 and 4, they're a 6-6 football team. Because they lost to Northern Illinois, struggled to beat Miami of Ohio. If they'd have played like that against Navy, they might have lost. If they'd have played like that against USC, they definitely would have lost. They wouldn't have been a playoff team. They wouldn't have beat Georgia. They wouldn't have beat Indiana. They wouldn't have beat Penn State. Teams evolve. Some teams get worse. Some teams get better. Very few teams stay the same. I think Boise's getting better each week. But to your point, Trev, they've benefited from playing inferior competition. That's going to change a lot this weekend. And that's why I think the fast start's so important on both sides of the ball. If Notre Dame wins the first quarter convincingly, Boise will get smoked. Just because they don't have the horses they had back in the day under Chris Peterson when they were really rolling. They just don't. They don't have they don't have a Kellen Moore at quarterback. They don't even have a Jared Zabrowski at quarterback. They don't have Maddox Madsen is a very mediocre quarterback. And it hurts their ability to be more productive on offense. It does. And so, like that's kind of my point, Trev, is they're not that team against South Florida that they were. But the gap between them and Notre Dame, if Notre Dame plays like the team that we've seen recently and not the team against Miami, then this still shouldn't be a competitive football game. Because I would say that the improvement from Boise State from week 1 to now isn't even close to the kind of improvement we've seen from Notre Dame from week 1 to week now, offensively.
Yeah.
Defensively, we'll see. But Miami might still score 27 points right now against Notre Dame. Maybe more, because now Miami'd have some film on Notre Dame to even see some things that they missed. The problem is they're not keeping this Notre Dame offense to 24 points if they played again.
No,
not happening. Not happening.
Brian, let's talk game wreckers. And we break this down offense and defense. I'll get us kicked off again here. I have a couple on offense. Real quick, before we dive into who, I kind of had a rough time picking game wreckers this week.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you're trying to think outside the box and not pick the same guys every time, or what?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to just, all right, game record number 1, CJ Carr. Game record number 2, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And game record number 3, Malachi Fields. Off to you, Brian, because it's just like that's
– But if that's how you see it, that's okay. And I would say this, Trev, is if the game goes how you think it's going to go, I have a hard time having it not being at least 2 of those 3 guys.
Oh, agreed. I didn't go with any of the running backs because I felt like that was a given. That's just me. No issue if anybody else does, but we're talking about a duo that has 16 touchdowns in 3 games. Like, I don't know how much more I could talk about them.
Yeah.
Like,
real bold take there, Trev.
yeah.
Jeremiah Love and Jarian Price are going to score again? Oh, okay. Way to go, Trev. Glad I pay you for them big bucks for that analysis.
The odds for Jeremiah Love to score a touchdown is just a touchdown is minus 500. Basically, that means if you bet $10, you'd win $2. Like, yeah. Death taxes, Jeremiah Love is going to score a touchdown. It's one of those things.
I mean, I'm trying to think. He's only, what? I know he didn't score against Miami.
Nope.
Correct? So give me 1 second. I'm going to look this up real quick because this is actually quite an incredible statistic. But if you look at Jeremiah Love, he has scored in all but 2 games, 3 games in the last year. He didn't score against Georgia. It was the first time all year he didn't score. He didn't score against Ohio State, and he didn't score against Miami. He scored in every other game he's played in since then. Actually, you go back to the Oregon State game in 2023, he scored. So Notre Dame has played 21 games in the last since Audric Estime left. Jeremiah Love has scored in 18 of 21 games. And in 7 of those games, he scored multiple times. So there is a over twice as good of a chance that he scores multiple touchdowns than he scores no touchdowns. Just looking at the odds. So yeah, that's smart. That's why FanDuel's not going out of business and running out of money, because they're not making stupid odds. Yeah.
With that being said, some of my game wreckers, one of them is one that I do just think is going to have a dominant performance. And the other one is, it's just kind of more, the more I say that he's going to have a breakout game, the second that he does it, I'm going to sit in the post-game show. Like I said earlier in the week, Jaden Greathouse was going to. So
yeah, you said it the week before that, week before that too, man. I'm with you on that. That was going to be one of mine, so I'm with you on that.
But the first one I'll talk about is Eli Raridan. Shocker to people who first started listening, but in all seriousness, he provides a lot of mismatch nightmares for opposing defenses. There's not a linebacker that you can put on him, especially not on Boise State's roster. Ty Benefield, one of their safeties, he's 6'2". He's one of their bigger defensive players. He's just not good in coverage. It's not the strength of his game. He flies downhill. He blows up plays around the line of scrimmage. Your safety is your tackle for loss leader on your defense right now. He is. And you can't put the other safety on him because I think the other starting safety is 5'11". Eli Raridan, 6'7". He is somebody that Notre Dame is going to have to start attacking the middle of the field. We've talked throughout this week of, hey, it's no longer a mystery what Notre Dame does to be effective on offense. So part of what I hope to see, not necessarily a key to victory, but part of what I hope to see this week is Notre Dame more willing to attack the field, the middle of the field. How do you do that? Well, it's with the 2 guys that I projected to be my game wreckers for this week. We haven't seen Eli Raridan do a whole lot in the seam. We haven't seen Eli Raridan do a whole lot across the middle of the field. We haven't seen that from Jaden Greathouse either. So I'm kind of pairing those 2 together, but those are my 2. Eli Raridan, because I do actually believe that this will be the game. I guess the best way to put it is I would be surprised if Eli Raridan didn't have a big game this weekend. Because of how this season has gone, I wouldn't be surprised if Jaden Greathouse didn't. Not saying that I agree with it, but I expected to see it against Purdue. We saw it a little bit against Arkansas, but if it doesn't happen against Boise State, I'm not going to be like, oh my goodness, I'm baffled. But if Eli Raridan doesn't, I will be a little shocked because of the matchup night.
The matchup,
so
yeah.
Those are my 2 on offense.
I'm not going with Jaden Greathouse just because I don't think they care to make him a bigger part of the offense. I hope I'm wrong on that. And I hope that we look back and be like, hey, this Jaden finally had to break out. Him and CJ are finally connecting. I mean, look, I don't know what else CJ Carr needs to do. Like anytime you give the ball even remotely with him a chance to catch it, he's going to go out and make the catch. So maybe you might want to do that more often. I'm kind of going with what I am going running backs number 1, just because that's the best part of your team. And when if you're gonna blow a team out the way that we're talking about blowing them out, then the running backs be a part of it, which you have taken to such an extreme that you're not even going to mention them because it should just be assumed. And I totally get that. And I'm with you on that. But I do think that they need to make sure that they're locked in and don't turn the ball over and don't drop passes. Like, you've got to make sure you're locked in. Don't start reading your own press clippings and think, hey, we're big time and Boise's going to roll over and die just because we stepped on the field. Keep it going. Stay hungry. Be patient. Continue improving and evolving as a running back, especially Jeremiah Love, because let's be real. Jeremiah Love's had one good rushing game so far this year. That's it. And that was against Purdue. I mean, he didn't run the ball poorly against Arkansas. There just weren't a lot of holes there when he was in the game. He didn't run the ball great against Texas A&M. We broke that down. It was partly the line, partly him, and then he didn't do much of anything against Miami. So I still think he has a lot of improvement and a lot of something to show as a runner in this game. And so I would like to see that. And then Jadarian Price is like, dude, just everything you did the first 4 games except for the one fumble, keep doing that. Just keep doing what you're doing. But I also think it's pretty obvious that Mike Denbrock is going into this game like he has the last few, saying, I got to find ways to get Jeremiah and Jadarian to football in different ways, especially Jeremiah. And that's where I think the lack of, like, you and I talked about it before the show, I don't think much of Boise State's secondary. They have had way better secondaries in the past. So they've had way better athletes in the secondary. I think they're smart football players. I think they're well-coached football players. I think their secondary is full of tough kids. I don't think they're very athletic. And I think they can be beat by a good pass offense. And Notre Dame has recently they're not even a good pass offense. The last 3 games, they've pretty much been an elite pass offense. The last 3 games. And I think I saw CJ. I had CJ Carr's 3rd in college football in quarterback rating against Power 5 teams. And he's 5th in college football, I think, 5th or 6th in college football in yards per attempt against Power 5 teams. So, and Boise doesn't have the athletes that Arkansas and Purdue have. What they do have, however, is they're more disciplined, they're more sound than those 2 teams. But if the way that Mike Denbrock has called the last 3 games, he's going to look and say, I need to figure out how to get number 4 matched up against one of those guys. If there's a way that you can game plan to get say it again, say his
Marco name. Notarini.
If there's ways you can get Marco matched up against Jeremiah Love in space, how do you not do it? And I don't know that the screen game is the only way to do that, because he's a pretty smart kid. And I worry about him reading it and blowing it up before it can get going. But if you can get him in space in some angle routes, some, just quick outs, option routes against him, wheels, if there's ways that you can get Jeremiah Love matched up against a safety or a linebacker for Boise State, you're going to do it. And Mike Denbrock has proven the last 3 games that he wants to figure out ways to do that. And so I think it won't just be the running game. And that's what makes this running back room so hard to stop. I mean, Arkansas kept Jeremiah Love in check as a runner. Really? I mean, he did. He had, he had averaged 4.1 yards per carry.
Yeah. He
finished the game with, I think, 55 rushing yards, I believe. 57 rushing yards? Let me pull up Jeremiah's stats. 57 rushing yards on 14 carries, 4.1 yards per carry. If you'd have told Arkansas before the game, hey guys, you're going to hold Jeremiah Love to 57 rushing yards on 14 carries. And yeah, Jadarian Price is going to get you a little bit. He's going to bite you a little bit, but he's only going to rush for 86 yards on 13 carries. So when you play Notre Dame's big-time running backs, you're only going to give up, 143 yards rushing on 27 carries. They're going to be like, all right, like, we did okay. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to tell you something. I left something really important out. And that is that they're also going to combine for 105 receiving yards. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that. They're like, oh, man. That's what makes this unit so dangerous. Is you can shut them down in the pass game, the run game, but you can't shut them down in everything. And so that's
keep
why
them out of the end zone.
Exactly.
I mean,
who has kept them out of the end zone? Miami, Georgia, and Ohio State. And in 2 of those 3 games, he didn't barely touch the ball.
Yeah,
because he was injured. He barely touched the ball. He had 4 carries against Ohio State last year.
Yeah, he had 4 carries for 3 yards.
Yeah, and he had 6 carries against Georgia he was injured, and he didn't touch the ball much. So the best chance you have of keeping Jeremiah Love out of the end zone is that the Notre Dame coaches or quarterback decide not to hand him the football. That's your best shot of keeping him out of the end zone.
Yep. And technically, it wasn't a touchdown, but he did get into the end zone on a 2-point conversion against Ohio State as well. So
That's true.
He still was able to cross the white chalk, but
that's right.
I'm just messing.
He's my number one. He's my number one guy.
Well, I get that.
Who
else do you have on? Oh, I just had Greathouse and Raritan on offense.
I had Raritan. I had CJ Carr as one of mine also. Look, and the reason I have CJ this week, it's different than just, hey, keep doing what you're doing. It's, I think Boise's going to throw stuff at you that you haven't seen a whole lot of yet. Miami didn't blitz Notre Dame a lot. They didn't need to. I mean, that's what made it harder for the offenses, because they could drop 7 and still get to the – heck, the last drive of the game, they dropped 8 and still got to the quarterback. And so you haven't really faced a heavy pressure package yet, and I think Boise's going to do that. So I think CJ's got to be a game record, because if you can accurately get the ball out to the right receivers against the pressure, they're going to rip Boise apart, because that means if you're bringing 6, maybe even 7, if CJ can get the ball out accurately, what happens then is now all of a sudden you're in space against that second of those linebackers. That's not going to go well. My concern is that CJ turns the ball over in those situations, does what he's done every other game, which is make a poor decision on how to throw the ball away, which then leads to, minus 14s or whatever, like we saw last week on an intentional grounding. Like, you can't have that. And so he's got to be a game record in this game. He's got to keep doing what you're doing, limit the mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. Boise's going to do everything in their power to try to force you into mental mistakes, because they know physically they can't beat this team and they can't beat CJ. So mentally, he's going to have to be sharp and be a game wrecker. And sometimes being a game wrecker against what I think he's going to see is kind of like what we saw against Arkansas. That guy's coming in your face, drop that arm angle down, hit him 5 yards down the field, then let him go do the work. That's what you got to do. But it gets to the point where it's like, what makes it – here's the rub for Boise, though, Trev. Okay, you bring 6, and Notre Dame just does an empty release where they just run a swing route to Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, and now it's 5-on-5, and you're done. Like that's what makes this offense so unique. Is all the thing Notre Dame has the weapons. Okay, sure, you brought a heavy overload blitz, but Notre Dame happened to be running a tunnel screen to Malachi, Faison, or Greathouse at that particular time, and now it's out the gate. That's what makes it so hard to defend this offense. So I think CJ's got to be one. And then my final one is Malachi Fields, just because I look at Boise, Trevor, and their corners can't run with him, and him and CJ are starting to get more and more of a connection, as we've seen each week. Denbrock starting to do a few more things to try to get him the football and get him in situations where, hey, look, we're obviously making it a focal point to get him the football. And so with that being said, I think that puts him in a great position to go out there and make some big plays. And what I like about what they're doing with Malachi is he doesn't have to catch the ball 8-9 times to have an impact in the game. He can do that in 3 catches. I mean, what did he have against Purdue? 2, and completely changed the game. 66-yard touchdown and a 3rd and 10 and conversion. I mean, he can change the game in 2-3 touches. And I think he'll continue that in this game. I think he's a guy that's going to go out there and have a big day, because I think that Boise's going to say, hey, we got a 6'2" corner and a 6-foot corner. We can match up size-wise. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't. So I think that he's going to be another guy that has a big day. Let's go defense, Trev. Who's your first game wrecker on defense?
Like I do every week, I'm going to work front to back, and the first one I'm going with is Bryce Young. I think that, this is going to be the freakiest athlete that this Boise State offensive line is going to face in quite a while. And that's not a knock on Boise State's level of competition, because they've faced really good athletes before in the past. I mean, like we talked about, they faced Abdul Carter last year. They faced the kid from Oregon. But They have yet to go up against a 6'7", 273-pound defensive end. But the other reason why I have him on there, and honestly the bigger reason, is Boubacar, in my opinion, desperately needs somebody else to step up opposite of him at the edge. Because he's been spectacular this season in both phases, against the run and as a pass rusher. But like we saw in 2022 with Isaiah Foskey, teams, if you only have a edge rusher, they can do things to scheme you out.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that against Clemson, I think actually not Clemson. We saw that against, because they beat Clemson in 22. The game is escaping me, but there was one game where they game plan and completely took Isaiah Foskey out of the game.
Yes, it was second half of the. I'm trying to. Oh goodness, yeah, I know you're talking about. I'm going to go look at the schedule. There was a game in 2022 where the opponent absolutely took Isaiah Foskey out of the game. Just double teamed him, and was it? Yeah, I'll look it up, Trev, because as I go through the game, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that was the game.
Okay,
but yeah, I think it was Navy. No, it wasn't Navy. Was it? Was it Stanford?
I was just about to say it might have been, because I remember them being at home.
I think it might have been Stanford.
And there was a game that Isaiah Foskey was just completely taken in both phases, against the run and the pass.
Yeah.
And they had other ends on that team. Like Nana Osafo-Mensah was he was a quality football player. He made some big impactful plays in some key moments, but he wasn't on the same level playing field. This is the first time in quite some time Notre Dame has had two edge rushers that have the potential to be on the same playing field to the degree of skill sets. I think this is going to be a game where Bryce Young is absolutely going to be able to take advantage of that and show that, hey, I can be the perfect complement to Boubacar on the other side. And we've seen flashes of it. It's not like I'm asking him to be this guy that he just hasn't been all season, and against a quality offensive line, like now it's time, you know, but it's time to put it all together. And Bryce Young is my first game record.
I'm going up front too, Trev. I'm going to go Gabriel Rubio. I think this is a game where he's going. This is a Gabriel Rubio game, in my opinion. It needs to be anyway. Big interior, tough kids. They're going to try to run downhill on Notre Dame. They're going to try to run their stretch plays. They're going to try to run their gap scheme plays. This is a game where if Gabriel Rubio has a big game, one of our keys to victory was slow down the run game, make them beat you. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on how to slow down the run game. We just talked about why you need to slow down the run game. But one of the big things to do is Gabriel's got to have a big game. Somebody in the chat said Jared Dawson too. Agree. I think all the D tackles have to have a big game, but I think Gabriel is uniquely built to thrive in a game like this.
Yeah.
And he's just getting better. I mean, he's been kind of good all year, but he's just gotten better each week. He's been a force against the run for the most part the last 2 weeks, and I think he's some things he can still do better. There was one play last week where he got off a block and just rocked the running back. And you're like, okay, that's what I want to see more of him. But I think this is a game where if they're going to shut down the run game, I have a hard time seeing that happening without Gabriel Rubio having a big day. I do. I think he's got to have a big day for Notre Dame to win this football game.
Agreed. My next game record, and this one is partially barring him being allowed to play faster and free into the football. And I'm hoping that they do based on Boise State's style of play. But my next game record is Drake Bowen. I think because of the scheme of the defense, he has been wrongly criticized this year. And of course, you know, the people in the I hate Drake Bowen camp, which is a weird camp to be in anyways, but have gotten extremely, extremely loud this year because of the defensive philosophy and them asking the linebackers to hang back and not attack downhill and play violent and play to the football. Part of him being my game wrecker is Chris Ash turning the linebackers loose, but I think this is the perfect game and perfect opportunity to do it because this isn't a team that can really hurt you over top. But I think that Drake Bowen has a game where we sit down in the post-game show, or you guys sit down in the post-game show and you say, okay, that's the 34 that we saw last year. So
they finally allowed him to be that guy.
Yes. And I have Drake as that because shutting down the run is going to be an important aspect of this game. And I think that trio of running backs that Boise State have they're going to be getting flashback nightmares in number 34 coming and closing on the football quick on their flight back to Boise, Idaho. So I have Drake Bone as my second one. Brian, what about you?
Unfortunately, Trev, I don't have a linebacker on my list this week just because
I get it.
They're not and until Chris Ash completely changes his defense, he's not allowing the linebackers to be that kind of impact player. Mm-hmm. You're not allowing your linebackers to be difference makers. They make a play here, they make a play there in coverage, but you've done more to give Kingston Viliama-Asa and Drake Bowen chances to make plays in coverage than you've given them chances to make plays against the run or against the rushing the quarterback, which I think is just like a coaching malpractice, in my opinion. That's just you saying we're going to run this scheme independent of what I have as players. That's what that is. So until Chris Ash shows me that, hey, I know how to coach a college defense again, I know it's been a while, but I figured it out. Until he shows me that, I just can't in good faith have a linebacker on there.
I get it.
But I'm going to go with some DBs because I do think Mike Mickens has them boys playing a little bit more aggressively. And a guy that I have a feeling is going to have a big day. Now, I don't know where he's going to play, but I just feel like this is going to be a game where Christian Gray makes a couple huge plays in this game. So I have Christian Gray as one of my game wreckers in this game. And now if he's into the boundary, he's going to get some unique chances. That's going to be a tough matchup for him, especially when he's matched up against Chris Marshall in the boundary because that's a big 6'4+ kid that can run. But if he's to the field, and this is where I don't know where they're going to use him because Leonard Moore was upgraded from questionable to probable today. But what are they going to do with Leonard Moore? Are they going to start him and say, okay, let's get him some work? Are they going to not start him and maybe work him in? Or are they going to say, okay, he's good to go if we need him, but if we can get through this game without him, we're going to be okay because we want to get him healthy for NC State and USC and then moving forward, which is not a bad idea. But if Christian Gray's to the field, I even more so feel good about this because this is the kind of game where Maddox Madsen throws a quick throw and he doesn't see Christian Gray stepping in front of it. And so I think Christian Gray is going to make a couple big plays in this game that are going to really shut some things down and give Notre Dame chances to really put this one away early.
Love that. Love that pick. My last one's also in the secondary, and I'm actually going to go as far as call my shot here. I think Tate Johnson gets a pick 6 in this game. I do. Look, man, he got his hand on the football a couple of times against Arkansas, so he has a little bit of a taste for it. With how much Boise State likes to throw underneath, I think that's begging for Tate Johnson to love that. Love that. I think that's begging for Tate Johnson to just slide underneath one of those crossing routes and then take it to the house. Plus, I would love to see what he can do with the ball in his hands, considering he's also being recruited to be a
pretty
wide
good
receiver.
at that in high school.
Yeah.
They moved him quarterback his senior year, and they just snap him the ball, let him go. Yeah.
I mean, but in all seriousness, I think Tate Johnson is due for a really big game. I love the dynamic between him and Adon Schuler. We said it last week that Tate Johnson insertion into the starting lineup was going to free up Adon Schuler to play like how he did in 2024. We saw that come to fruition. I think that Tate Johnson has a big week. I think he sneaks underneath an underneath route and takes one back to the house because I think he got his hands on a couple of them last week and he's itching to get one. So I got Tate as my last one.
That was mine. I'm with you on that. I just look. Here's part of the reason I think Notre Dame is better against Miami and A&M now than they were then. Even if Chris Ash calls the exact same plays, having Devontae Smith and Dallas Golden at nickel instead of Carson Hobbs, and having more of Adon and Tay Johnson and less of Jalen Stroman just makes this a better secondary just by itself. They looked way better in the secondary last week with Devontae, Dallas, and Tay, and a more experienced Mark Zachary than they did at any point in time this year with Leonard Moore on the field. Now, none of them looked as good as Leonard Moore. I'm saying the secondary looked better. That's not to say they looked better because there was no Leonard Moore. My point is, even without your star, your secondary looked way better because of all those other players. Now, as the season wears on, and you can then insert your star boundary corner, that's where the secondary starts looking like we thought it was going to look. Even with the scheme issues that are going to continue to kind of rear their ugly head. Because the reality is, Trevor, even if the scheme sucks, when they get this defense fully healthy, you're still going to have those guys make some plays. even within a junk scheme, they're still going to make some plays. And that's what kind of has me a little fired up about what this secondary can be. And then if they get healthy and Chris Ash makes the necessary changes and Marcus Freeman demands he makes the necessary changes, that's when this defense starts to look like that top 25 defense that we're hoping it can be. Like you said, I'm not ever going to talk about that's how they're going to look like the top 5 defense they should have been. I'm past that. It's possible, but I just don't have any faith that it's going to get done. I'll just give me a top 25 defense. If you can give me a top 25 defense, Notre Dame if you tell me the rest of the year Notre Dame's going to play like a top 25 defense from now to the end of the regular season, I'll be like, all right, cool. Now I'm just curious what seed they're going to be, because they're not going to lose, and I don't know that they're going to have a close game. Not with this offense. Not with this offense. So the secondary is where a lot of my excitement comes from on that.
I'm with you. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of the show today. But don't go anywhere. We're going to tie this all up, talk some big picture college football games. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we're talking some college football, big picture games going on across the country. There's a couple of big ones going on, and then we're also going to talk about some other games that we're keeping our eye on. But it not as jam-packed of a slate as it was last week, but there are still some interesting games to tune into outside of Notre Dame versus Boise State. But another one of them that we are going to talk about is also in that 3:30 slot, and that is the number 16 Vanderbilt Commodores on the road against the number 10 Alabama Crimson Tide that kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. Kickoff is on ABC. As of right now, Alabama is favored by 10.5 points. The over-under is set at 55.5 points on FanDuel. Brian, this one is going to be a very interesting matchup because I'm sure you remember, and he hasn't stopped since, but Diego Pavia has been talking that talk ever since the start of the season. So far up to this, he's backed it up. Yeah. But now he gets tested in a big way this year.
That's just who he is. And I'm not a huge Diego Pavia fan, but it's genuine. It's who he is. And I dislike it less when it's just kind of naturally who a kid is, right? I mean, it's just like, okay, it is what he is. But to your other point, Trevor, he's backed it up so far. And, I would say that look, you say, well, they haven't played anybody really good. I'm like, well, okay, it's Vanderbilt. And they beat Virginia Tech on the road by 24. They beat South Carolina on the road by 24. It's time for us to stop looking at the name on the helmet, the logo on the helmet, and start realizing this is a good football team. This isn't that 4-0 Vanderbilt team back in the day that said, we want Bama, and then got that's not who this is. This is a much different football team. Clark Lee has done an absolutely outstanding job with Vanderbilt right now. I mean, he really has. And the thing that's wild about it is they can run the ball. I mean, they legitimately can run the football on people. And it's not just Pavia. I mean, he's their leading rusher. But they have a couple other kids on that team that can run the football as well. And they have Cedric Alexander, who's, rushed for over 500 yards last year. He was at 3.6 yards per carry last year. He's up to 5.3. This season. He's a nice little complimentary player. And then they've got a New Mexico State transfer, kid by the name of McKalen Young, who's averaging over 10 yards a carry so far this season. So he had 8 carries for 95 yards against Virginia Tech, 2 for 64 against Georgia State. He's a kind of a big play weapon, and they're made better because you have to spend so much time focusing on Diego Pavia. But the other part of kind of what makes this team dangerous is they have legit pass catchers. Eli Stowers is one of the best tight ends in the country. Junior Sherrill's been an outstanding player for them so far this season. They have legit weapons. Now, do they have like a receiving core as talented as Alabama's? No, but they're experienced. They've been together. Stowers was on the team last year. Pavia was on the team last year because Stowers and Pavia transferred in together. They both came from New Mexico State together. So they obviously have 2 years at Vanderbilt, but 3 years together. And so I think that experience has really helped this football team quite a bit. And so then it's easier for the newer pieces to kind of transfer in. So I'm impressed, Trev. I'm a believer in Vanderbilt. I think they're a legitimately good football team. I think that they can play with Alabama. Doesn't mean they're going to beat Alabama, but I think they can legitimately play with Alabama. And they didn't just beat South Carolina. They smoked South Carolina. I mean, it wasn't like they smoked South Carolina. Having said that, on the other side, I think Bama picked Bama to win last week, and they won last week. And because this is still a really talented football team. And what we have to understand is we can't always allow our first impression to be the thing that defines a team over the course of a year. When a team has given you enough evidence to say, hey, it's time to change your opinion, then you've got to take that. Now, I understand people not doing that prior to last week because, again, it's who'd they beat before that? It was Wisconsin, who stinks, and then who was the team they beat before Wisconsin? Louisiana Monroe. Well, they just went into Athens and beat Georgia. And not only beat Georgia, I don't think they ever trailed. They never trailed in that game. The closest Alabama ever got was the 3 points that the final score was determined by. But I just think this is a good football team. They're getting healthier on defense, which is going to help. That's certainly important. And I just think their offense is starting to find its groove. The fact that they don't run the ball very well is eventually going to bite them in the butt. There's going to be some game where their offensive pass game is not clicking, and the fact that they just don't really want to run the football is going to be a problem. So that's why I'm going with Bama in this game. I still think they're too talented. It's in Tuscaloosa, and here's the thing. I got to think this Alabama team, I've kind of given up on trying to predict this in games because of what we've seen so many times, but I got to think that this Alabama team is going to be pretty fired up for this football game. But the danger is, okay, we beat Georgia, so now we're feeling good about ourselves again, and you don't bring the same kind of energy that you against Vanderbilt that you did last year. But I got to think you getting embarrassed by Vanderbilt last year is going to be enough to have you locked in and focus on this game. I have a hard time believing Alabama's not going to be locked into this game. At the end of the day, they just have better players. And I think they're playing very good football. So that's where I'm at in the preview, Trev. Do you have a prediction for the game?
Yeah, I do. I think this game is going to be really interesting because I agree with you that it's like, Alabama's going to want some revenge from last year, and this is going to be something. But Vanderbilt is a team that I don't think they care if Alabama wants to have. That's what makes this so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this matchup in its entirety, because I think if it were really, there's only a handful of other teams that I think could go into Tuscaloosa and not care.
Mm-hmm.
And Vanderbilt's just one of those teams. That's what I think is going to be so interesting about this matchup. I'm not really worried about Vanderbilt's ability to score. I'm not. I think Alabama's defense is better. It kind of begs the question, okay, what did the Alabama-Georgia game show me more? Was it more indicative of Georgia's offense or more indicative of Alabama's defense? I think the truth is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Because we talked about some of the holes that Georgia's offense had going into it. But to the defense of Alabama's defense, that they played a very good game, and they are getting healthier. So I think this matchup is going to be won and lost between Alabama's offense and Vanderbilt's defense. Can Alabama finally run the football effectively? I think that's a valid question. But
Vanderbilt care to run the football effectively.
Yeah.
That's the bigger question for me, Trev. Do they even want to run the football?
Yeah, honestly. Which is a crazy sentiment to say when we're talking about Alabama. I know it's a different regime and different times, but that is a wild thing to say. But you're not wrong. And then for Vanderbilt, it's okay. One of the things that I think is going to help them out in this game is the fact that they gave up 35 points to Utah State. Because they got their overlook meh out of the way. And that was kind of, I don't know if we ever labeled the Utah State Vanderbilt game a trap game, but they're looking ahead to playing Alabama and Tuscaloosa. So it's going to come down to the Clark Lee defense versus a Kalen DeBoer, or a Ryan Grubb led offense. And I think that's going to be an exciting matchup. But at the end of the day, I'm also with you. I'm taking the home team. Sometimes it just comes down to what horses you have. And I love Diego Pavia and I love Eli Stowers. They also can't play defense. And so I have the Crimson Tide winning.
That's where Vanderbilt lacks talent. They don't have the talent on defense they have on offense. And you've seen that before just the game against Utah State. I mean, I thought Georgia State passed the ball relatively well on them. South Carolina missed some opportunities to throw the ball on them. I think that they are well coached on defense and they're tough on defense, but they just don't have the horses on defense, in my opinion. So that's why what'd you say your score was on this one, Trev? What'd you say?
I don't have a score prediction.
Okay.
I have Alabama winning. What's your score prediction?
I have Alabama winning 35-31. That's my prediction for this game.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a game where I think Alabama's it's going to be a game where it's going to be a close game. Vanderbilt's always going to be within striking distance, but you just kind of feel like I don't know that they're going to be able to get over the hump because every time they kind of score to make it a 3-point game, 1-point game, Bama goes down and scores. So that's how I see it playing.
So you're taking the over. FanDuel has the over-under set at 55.5.
Yeah, I definitely am taking the over. I'm curious if Vandy's going to win, they're going to have to do the one thing that nobody's been able to do this year, and that's turn Ty Simpson over. And the other thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. I thought Alabama's offensive line, which is to me a big concern for them, did a much better job last week in pass pro. Much better job. Will Vandy heat them up a little bit? Georgia tried to rely on their front, and their front, as you and I have talked about, it's not a vintage Georgia front. They're still playing defense and calling defense like they've got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and guys like that on the edge. Even from last year, Jalen Walker, they don't have those guys. Chris Cole's a legit pass rusher, but he's kind of all they really have, in my opinion, as far as like pure pass rushers. Vandy's not going to sit back and just rush forward. They're going to go after Ty Simpson and try to force him to mistakes. If he can play a relatively clean game, I just think Alabama's horses are a little too good. That's why I have the Tide winning. I won't be shocked if Vanderbilt upsets them, but like I just think Alabama's got too many weapons, and they're starting to heat up a little bit on offense.
Could you imagine living in a world where Vanderbilt just kind of has Alabama's number? It's like when we started talking about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, and it's like Michigan's just kind of the team that Ryan Day can't get over.
Yeah.
Imagine if Clark Lee is that beast that
or
Caleb
like
DeBoer came.
Clemson starting with Syracuse. For me, someone my age, that doesn't affect me at all. I remember a day when Syracuse was consistently a top 10 to 15 team. Yeah. Even before Donovan McNabb, like Marvin Graves way back in the day, Paul Pasqualoni. I remember him back in the day. Not Paul Pasqualoni. Oh, goodness gracious. The coach that was Paul McPherson, the quarterback, because he had the same last name as the head coach. It was Dick McPherson's head coach, and they had a kid named Paul McPherson, who's their quarterback. Good player. I mean, there's been times when Syracuse has been that kind of team. It's been a minute, but when they were in the SEC, or the Big East, they were a good football team. Vanderbilt's like never been good. Like even the years where James Franklin led him to like 9 wins in bowl games, they didn't beat a single ranked team that entire time. So his can't beat. I'm not even saying that to make fun of him. I mean, it kind of hit me after I said it, but that was the thing at the time is like they never beat anybody ranked. They just they'd beat the wins of games that, the other games. Well, this team has shown that they can beat ranked teams. But I just, again, at the end of the day, I just think Bama's too good for them. Just a little bit too much firepower, but it's going to be a fun game.
It is. It is for sure. Another game that I think is going to be a fun one is the night game between the number 3 Miami Hurricanes on the road against the number 18 Florida State Seminoles. Now, a week ago at this time, this matchup looked a lot bigger. Still a really big matchup. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Right now, Miami is currently favored by 3.5 points on FanDuel. The over-under is set at 54.5. Brian, this game is going to be really, really fun to watch. And I'm going to be interested to see which version of Miami's offense we get and then which version of Florida State's defense we get. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, Trev. Well, I'm not sold on Miami's offense right now. I'm really not. And even against USF, I mean, they look good, but I just think USF just ran out of gas after playing Boise and then Florida. And I think they kind of ran out of gas. And then we saw them against Florida, and they were not that great. And I still don't know what their offense is. Florida State's kind of the opposite. I think Florida State has proven that their offense is legit. Like, their offense is absolutely legit. The problem is Florida State's defense is not legit. At least that's kind of the concern that we have, is they looked great against Alabama and then beat up on two bad teams, and then Virginia just shredded them. Chandler Morris somebody shredded them. So now my question is, okay, can Florida State keep scoring? It can, because like if you're Miami, you want this to be a 24-21 game. If you're Florida State, you want this to be a shootout. And that's ultimately what this game's going to come down to is what's the pace of the game. If it's a shootout, I like Florida State's chances. If it's a low-scoring game, then I like Miami's chances, because now you're making it about line play, and that's where Miami has an advantage. I think there's some perimeter matchups that give Florida State an advantage. There's some things that Florida State can do to Miami that Notre Dame was not going to do to Miami, mainly the quarterback running and doing some different things in that regard. There were some opportunities that Notre Dame had in the passing game that they couldn't take advantage of because they couldn't protect the quarterback. Can Florida State do a better job of protecting the quarterback? Something they did not do late in the game against Virginia. That's a concern. This is going to be by far the best D-line that they've gone against. So there's aspects of this game, Trev, where I'm like, boy, I really like the matchup for Florida State here. Yeah, but then there's other parts of the matchup where I'm like, dude, I really like the matchup for Miami here. And so it's going to be a very fascinating game, and it's the first game between these two teams that was this kind of ranked-on-ranked matchup in a few years. And so I'm very much looking forward to this game. And when I mean ranked-on-ranked matchups, they've had ranked-on-ranked matchups before, but there was a very clear difference between the two teams. Usually it was Florida State was much better than Miami. The roles are reversed a little bit now, where Miami's the better team, perceived better team, and Florida State's the team that people are wondering if they've got a shot to beat Miami. I think this is, in a lot of ways, a pretty closely contested game in a lot of different ways. But, can Florida State stop Miami's run game? And can Miami's defense slow down Florida State's ability to be dynamic and rip off big plays? Those are the two things that are going to help determine this game for each team. What are your thoughts on this one, Trev? What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think this game is going to be won or lost in the trenches, because I like some of the skilled talent on either side. For Florida State, it's the quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. The perimeter threats for them are decent. I like them. And then for Miami, can you establish the run? Can Mark Fletcher get going? Can you get Malachi Tony going like you did a couple weeks ago? What's CJ Daniels going to do in this game? But for me, this comes down to Florida State's ability to give Thomas Castellanos time, because the one thing that he hasn't done this year is impressed me as a passer. Now, that it's not really his game, but I think that it's going to be tough to beat Miami if you're not effective from the pocket. I mean, we watched CJ Carr be very effective from the pocket and overcome a 21-7 deficit. But look, we're talking about an offensive line that gave up 19 pressures against Virginia's D-line. It's a good defensive line. That's not a D-line with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor and Justin Scott, and it's just a completely different battle. And I do think Thomas Castellanos has the ability to escape some of those pressures, but not all of them. He's not great. The thing that I think is weird about Thomas Castellanos is he's very hit or miss off schedule. Against Alabama, he was pretty good off script. One of the reasons why they won 31-17. Against Virginia, he was not. And I think some of that was, I think teams started to get a little bit of film on him, and they were able to defend the back end a little better when he broke contain.
I think he was very good at times against Virginia off schedule. That's what helped them get back in the game. But sure, he was also missed some big opportunities off schedule as well. It's like Florida State hit every single button against Alabama. Just pressed every single correct button. Just everything went their way. Against Virginia, not so much. So then my question is, okay, is Florida State a better home team than they are a road team? And how are they going to – I mean, but the other thing too is, are we sure that Miami's got a better offense than Virginia? So we talked about this last week on this very show, Trev. I said, watch out for that game because Virginia's offense is legit. I have not been blown away with Miami's offense. I've said this before. The success they had against Notre Dame was more about what the heck are you doing schematically, Notre Dame, than it was, wow,
Sure.
Miami looks like $1 million. They looked great against South Florida, but as I said, South Florida ran out of gas. They did not look great against Florida. They looked good, but not great. I think Florida State's offense has been kind of dynamic all year. But to your point is when Thomas Castellanos can get outside the pocket as part of the design or because he's got to buy time, he's dangerous. When he gets forced out of the pocket, that's when he wasn't good. To your point, Trevor, if you go back and watch that game, the majority of the off-script plays he made were either design plays or plays where nobody was open, he got outside, and then there was room to run or he could find somebody. When he got pressure right up the middle and had to scramble, that's when he's throwing off his back foot. That's when he's missing reads. That's when he panics and he speeds everything up and he makes big misses. And so that's going to be the key for Miami. And ultimately, I think that's going to tell us the game is that battle in the Miami D-line and the Florida State offensive line, Trev, to your point, is going to be the difference in this game. And if Florida State's offensive line plays like they did against Alabama, they got a shot to win this game. If their offensive line plays like they did against Virginia, I don't know if they can, because their run blocking was very inconsistent against Virginia as well, and their pass pro was not good at times. Like too many instances where their pass pro just wasn't good, and they're going to have to get better in that regard in this game. If they don't, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to absolutely be in trouble in this game. So that's the key to this game. It's that battle right there. Because I think I don't know that Deuce Robinson will go off if Thomas Castellanos has time.
Yeah,
like they'll run the ball on Miami if the line's playing well. And we talked about there's opportunities for Notre Dame to rip off some big plays against Miami. They just missed them.
Yeah, for
whatever reason. So this is going to be a very interesting one, Trev. Very interesting. Tell me your thoughts about when you think outcome, start thinking of result. Like, what's your sort of how you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I have Miami winning this one. I think their D-line is going to be too much for the Florida State offensive line. Now, one of the things that is going for Florida State is there were some holes that were kind of pointed out against Virginia on the road. And I think you even said it. It was I think it was earlier this week. You said, if you're a Miami fan, if you're a Miami player, it's like, come on, Virginia. Like, why'd you have to do that? Now they got a chip on their shoulder going into this game. I'm still not 100%. Thomas Castellanos has been an electric player, and he's made some fun plays. I'm still not sold on him as a passer. Sure. And I think that there's going to be a moment in this game where he's going to have to be a passer to move the ball on this Miami defense, and I just don't think he's going to be able to get it done. I think that D-line is going to put in some work. So I have Miami winning a close one.
I think if you're Miami, you want him staying in the pocket. Like, if you're going to beat me from the pocket, then tip my cap to you, bro.
Yep.
Like, what I'm not going to let you do is just get out of the pocket and get on the move and run and convert a 3rd and 9 with your legs. I'm going to make you beat us sitting back, going through your progressions and going through your reads. Because that, Trev, to your point, that's where he's not good.
Yep.
But can Miami do that? Like, that's what I'm curious about, because they're big and physical up front. But do they? If he gets outside, can they contain him in that regard? That's what I don't know. I've been kind of back and forth on this one, Trev. Number one, for a Notre Dame fan, you want Miami to win because it gives Florida State a second loss, and Florida State falls behind Notre Dame if Notre Dame wins. So that's one ACC team you got to worry about. If Miami loses, then okay, now Florida State's got a better record than you, and they've got to win at home against the team that you lost to on the road. That could matter at the end of the season. But I've said this about Miami and A&M. If you're a Notre Dame fan, should we root for Miami and A&M to win or lose? I'm like, well, it depends. But if you're going to root for them to lose, you better root for them to lose a lot, because you don't want to be here at the end of the season where Notre Dame's 10-2, Miami's 10-2, and Texas A&M is 10-2, and those three teams are battling for 1 or 2 playoff spots. That doesn't mean Notre Dame can't get in, because it's not always just about head-to-head, but you don't want to have that as part of the equation. And so either win a lot or lose a lot. So I look at it like this. You want them to eliminate other teams that you might be in contention with, because also I want another shot at Miami. I want Miami in the playoffs bad, because I want Notre Dame to have to play them again down there. because that's where it would most likely be if it's in the first round. I want another crack at Miami. Maybe I'm nuts for thinking that, but I do. I absolutely do. But anyway, I do also like Miami in this game. I'm still not 100% sold on Florida State. I've said this before, Trev. I think the opener was more about Alabama just thinking this is a 2-10 team and not playing hard. And I think, as I've said to you a million times, you can't just turn it on when it's remotely comparable talent-wise. You can't turn it on. Under Nick Saban, you could fall behind Georgia Southern. Remember that year they fell behind Georgia Southern? Remember that year they fell behind Furman? Or no, the Citadel had a lead on Bama, and they just steamrolled them because there was a giant, massive talent gap. You can't just flip the script if you didn't prepare for the entire week to take a team seriously, you just can't flip that script on at halftime. It just doesn't work that way. Look at Notre Dame and Northern Illinois last year. And so I just don't think Bama turned this, like, I don't think Bama knew what they were walking into. Miami has 4 games of film now of new coordinators, new players, and new positions. They're going to be more prepared. And at the end of the day, I still think Miami's the better team along both lines. And ultimately, I think that's what gets it done. So I think Florida State will make enough big plays to keep this one close. But I think it's going to come down to 27-24, and I won't be shocked if we have another wide right situation in this game. That's where I'm going with it, Trev. Trev's looking at me 28 years old, like, what do you mean?
I was just about to ask. I don't know what that means, but
back in the 90s, Florida State lost to Miami like 3 times on missed field goals to the right.
Oh,
yeah, either chances to win or tie multiple times. So, when we're done with the show today, go on YouTube and type in Florida State Miami wide right and just have some fun looking at that. But yes,
heard.
That's how I see that one playing out.
I like that. Brian, before we get out of here today, there are some other games that we are keeping our eye on. Not as high octane as what some of these are, but definitely ones to keep your eye on. And the first one is a 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. And it's actually, one of them is a team that we actually just got done talking about, the number 24 Virginia Cavaliers against the Louisville Cardinals on the road. Louisville is favored in this game by 6.5.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Very interesting because Louisville's 4-0, Trev, but I haven't been completely blown away with Louisville so far this year. They had a nice road win last week, though, over Pitt. They did. And I think that is partly why you're seeing them favored. You've seen Miller Moss Miller Moss, the first 2 games looked very average against not very good teams, Eastern Kentucky, James Madison. He looked better against Bowling Green, and he looked pretty good last week against Pitt. He had the turnover late, but he threw for over 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns, avoided the bad turnovers, ran for a touchdown also, really avoided the big mistakes against Pitt. And we saw the Louisville offense kind of finally start to look like what we expect the Louisville offense to look like, Trev, and they hadn't really through the first 3 games. I mean, they're still not running the ball well, which just blows my mind. And to me, this is a coaching mistake by Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom is trying to go do what he wants to do as opposed to really building around what your talent says. He kind of was forced into that a little bit last year with some receiver injuries. They're just out there chucking it all over the field again and not even trying to run the football this year, which I think is a mistake. But this is a game where you've got 2 teams that, I mean, honestly, Trev, have playoff aspirations. When you look at their schedules, there's enough opportunities on both of their schedules to say, hey, if you can, kind of go 10, 11-1 the rest of the way, play for the ACC championship, you got a shot to maybe go do something. And so this is one of those games where you've got a chance for separation. I think for Louisville, who doesn't get a lot of respect right now in the poll, if you look at the polls, I mean, they're 4-0 and they're unranked, despite being ranked for a good chunk of last year. You're like, man, well, what does Louisville got to do to get ranked? Because not only are they not ranked, Trev, there's teams with losses ahead of them. South Florida, Utah, and Mississippi State are all other receiving votes teams that are ahead of Louisville, who got 36 votes. And so I don't think there's a lot of respect for Louisville yet. This is a game that can somewhat earn you some respect. Not a ton because it's still Virginia, but the voters thought enough of Virginia to put them in the top 25 last week. And they did beat Florida State. So I think this is the kind of game that starts to get Louisville on that upward ascent. and starts to allow them to jump into the top 25 next week, first and foremost. I think that's important for Louisville too. But when you look at their schedule of what's coming up, they've got at Miami. They got a bye and then playing at Miami. Okay, how do you perform in that game? So if you beat Virginia and let's say you lose to Miami in a barn burner, a close game, after that, Trev, you've got BC at home, at Virginia Tech, home against Cal, home against Clemson, at SMU, and home against Kentucky. There's a good chance that Louisville's 11-1 at that point in time. If you lose this game, you're going to have a hard time being in that contention. Now you have to win the ACC to have a chance to get into the playoffs. And then you look at the flip side for Virginia, and it's a big game for Virginia as well, Trev. They've got at Louisville, then they've got a bye. Then they got Washington State at home, at North Carolina, at Cal, home against Wake Forest, at Duke, home against Virginia Tech. The way they've played this year, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're 11-1 going into the last game of the, or 10-1 going into that Virginia Tech game. So, you start looking at that and saying, dude, I mean, let me just look something up here real quick. But you win this game, all of a sudden, you got a chance to go do something. And Virginia, since 2004, from 2004 to now, Virginia has beaten Virginia Tech a grand total of one time. That was in 2019. One time. They got a shot to flip that this year. They get them at home, and they're a much better team right now. So this is an interesting matchup for me, Trev, between these two teams that has more on the line than people are talking about when you look at their schedules down the road. So I'm intrigued by this game. And you know what? I like Tony Elliott. And I've always said this. His players play hard for him. They don't quit. He just doesn't have a great team, and they just can't win games. But we've talked about last year, they're not real good. They're coached okay, but they don't have a quarterback. But, man, those kids never quit. They always play hard for that guy. And they did that against Notre Dame, scored the last 14 points of the game. Well, now they've got some talent. They got some transfers in. They finally found a quarterback. It's like, okay, this is a good football team. So can they keep that going or not? Because weren't they like 4-1 at one point in time last year as well? I believe they started the season off last year in a pretty good place as well. I'm going to look that up here real quick. So I remember us talking about it at one point in time saying, if Virginia can do this, this, and this, they've got a shot. Yes, I was correct, Trev. They were 4-1 last year. They beat Richmond, beat Wake, beat Coastal Carolina, beat BC. They lost a game to Maryland, and then they played Louisville at home, had a lead, lost it, and they were never the same team after that. Now's your chance at redemption.
I'm very interested to see what this game is going to be about from the Louisville perspective, too, because Ron English, you and I are not fans of him as a defensive coordinator. They're gearing up to face a really good offense.
Yes. This is a legit offense, Trev. This is a legit
offense. That's going to be very – because I love the skill talent for Louisville. I mean, you and I put them as – I know I had them in my top 5 running back rooms in the country. Mm-hmm. I think they were third on my list.
I think we both had a third, yeah.
Because I think I went Notre Dame, Penn State, and I can't remember if I had A&M or Louisville as my third team.
We had that as our 4, both as our 4.
Yeah.
That's the point. Like, they were legit top 3 to 4 running back room.
Yes. Point being, I love their skill. I like their receivers. I know they lost to Corey Brooks, but they still have the Bell kid that's still there.
Chris Bell. Yep. Colin Lacey's back.
Colin Lacey is back. Yep. I mean, I love the talent on this, but that game is going to be huge for them, especially for Ron English and that defense. That's going to be fun to watch. Next game, Brian, that we're keeping our eye out on, we're switching gears and going over to the Big Ten. We're talking Michigan State on the road against Nebraska. It's a 4 p.m. kickoff on FS1. Nebraska's favored by 11.5.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit, Trev. I kind of get it, but it also surprised me a little bit. We're switching gears because we're going to a different league, but it's kind of a similar story, right? Like, you've got these teams that are kind of vying to be the next in line group, right? So, like, Louisville and Virginia, who's that next in line behind, Miami, and you're in there with Florida State and that kind of thing. And here in the Big Ten, it's like, look, you've got your teams that are the top teams in the Big Ten. Right now, best teams in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and I would say Michigan right now with their win over Nebraska. IU also in that conversation. And Illinois is trying to battle to get into that top group. They got knocked out by Indiana. Well, now you've got Michigan State and Nebraska that are saying, hey, look, we have rough losses. We both had rough losses. Michigan State's more acceptable than Nebraska's. You went on the road to USC. You competed, and they were just better than you. You look at your schedule. A game like this is going to help determine how good Michigan State can be. Can you get back into being in that tier 2 of the Big Ten? Right now, they're tier 3. But can you get some of those wins to get into the tier 3 of the Big Ten? You look at their schedule remaining, Trev, and if you can't win this game, you've got to still play at Indiana. You still have to play at Minnesota. You still have to play at Iowa, and you have to play Michigan at home, Penn State at home, and you've got to play Maryland in neutral field. Maryland's a pretty good football team this year for the league. So it's a big game for Michigan State. You've got to be able to try to pull off some kind of upset here on the road and show you can win on the road. Otherwise, your home slate gets tough. For Nebraska, it's, like, who are you? I mean, you go and pay all this money for transfers. You barely beat Cincinnati. You completely blow a chance to beat Michigan in that game. Completely get outplayed on your home field by Michigan. You need a win like this to give you some momentum. You need a win like this to say, okay, kind of get that stank from losing to Michigan, because the worst part about losing to Michigan, not only did you lose, you had to sit on it for an extra week because you had a bye. So how are they going to respond coming out in this game? And Nebraska is in a completely opposite situation of Michigan State. Michigan State's like, you need to win this game to survive and show progress as a program because your schedule is going to be pretty tough. For Nebraska, it's like after this, you've got to play at Maryland, which will be tough, at Minnesota, home against Northwestern, home against USC, at UCLA, at Penn State, home against Iowa. That's a challenging schedule, but not nearly as challenging as what it is for Michigan State. So you've got a chance to be still a 9-win team, but you lose this game and you're toast. And now people start saying, can Matt Rule win in the current era of college football? Because this is supposed to be his year. Year 3 has been the big year for Matt Rule. And so I'm very curious to see how this game goes. This is a lot on the line for Matt Rule. And then I don't think there's a lot on the line for Jonathan Smith, who's only in year 2. I think he's clearly shown progress. But this is the kind of win that maybe shows that you've expedited the process a little bit more than maybe some people think. So, and Trev, you've been saying for 2 years, Nebraska, you got to show me. You got to show me that you're a better team.
I mean, and it even goes back to longer than 2 years ago. I mean, I said it earlier on the show this week. Nebraska hasn't beaten a ranked opponent since 2016. I know Michigan State's not ranked, but for Matt Rule in this tenure and this regime, it's do or die time for Nebraska, because this is going to be the game where they show me, hey, maybe Nebraska has turned a corner, or I'm going to be able to sit there on Monday morning and say, yep, that's Nebraska. That's who they basically have been the entire time I've started watching football. Unfortunately, give or take a couple of years. And those years are now outliers, unfortunately. And so that's big for them. I think there's a lot more at stake, big picture. And this is just my take, because there's a lot at stake for Michigan State as well. But I think there's a lot more at stake for Nebraska in this game. Michigan State is still building. They're going into a hostile environment. I've liked what their young quarterback has done so far this year, and there's things for them to hang their hat on if they compete. Yep. But if you're Nebraska and you lose this game to a team that is up and coming,
that's what I'm saying. This isn't a game for who's going to be a playoff team amongst Nebraska and Michigan State. Neither of these teams are going to be in the playoff this year. Yep. It's about jockeying for position behind that top group. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of game where if you can pull off a win here for Michigan State, you've now leaped Nebraska already in year 2 of Jonathan Smith. And Nebraska can't allow that to happen. For Nebraska, you don't necessarily prove anything by beating Michigan State, but you stay alive to present opportunities to prove something later. But, let me rephrase. You can prove something negative in this game, but you can't prove anything like, hey, we've arrived as a program in the Big Ten because we beat Michigan State at home. Yeah. No. But you can prove that you are not even in that tier 2 right now, because they're both tier 3 teams right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The thing that's rough for Nebraska, too, is you had additions to your league that already came in and passed you up. And then the bottom tier of your league and a team in IU have immediately jumped up to top of tier 2, lower.
They're in tier 1 right now. Look, they went to the college football playoffs and they just beat Illinois by 50. they're a tier 1 Big Ten team right now. You could argue they're not at the top of the tier 1. Totally fine. Totally agree. They're not as good as Ohio State and Oregon, in my opinion, but they are absolutely in tier 1, in my opinion. They're a playoff contender this year.
Yeah.
They got some tough games they got to win, but they've proven that to me with the way that they blew out in Illinois and then went on the road and beat Iowa. Like, that shows me something. You're there now.
But point being, Nebraska is getting passed up by teams now. It's not like 3 years ago where you can like be 7-5 and hide.
Indiana has lapped you in 2 years under Kurt Cignetti. Lapped you. Yep. They're not even close right now as programs, Trev. It's not even close.
No.
You're going to tell me Indiana's got more resources than Nebraska? No. There's a lot on the line. This is a huge year for Nebraska, Trev, and that's why I say that Michigan game was a huge missed opportunity. And you can't miss on games like that, Trevor. If you're Nebraska, you can't miss on those opportunities. You just can't. You've got Michigan at home. This isn't even a great Michigan team, and you can't lose games like that. And let's be honest too, Trevor. Like, I never felt Nebraska was going to win that game, even when it was close. I mean, they fall behind 10-0, tie it. Michigan goes ahead 17, they tie it. Michigan goes ahead by 10. They kick a field goal to make it 7. Michigan goes ahead by 10, and then Nebraska scores with a minute left. No, you were not nearly as good as Michigan. It wasn't like a ginormous gap between the two of you, but you never led that game at home against Michigan. You never led. Not once. Like, that just – you should be better in year 3, Trev, at Nebraska. I'm sorry, you should be. But I also kind of have this feeling like I don't feel bad for Nebraska because you did this to yourself. You should still be a Big 12 program. And you'd be a much different program if you're in the Big 12. But you sold your soul for money. And all the teams that do that, like that leave their tradition and go join a conference just for money, I have no sympathy for when the things don't work out the way that they hoped that it would. And Nebraska's part of that group. So that's an interesting one. Here's a game that's the exact opposite, Trevor. Clemson and North Carolina, 2 absolutely reeling football teams. Who can get things back on track? This is an intriguing game.
I mean, if Clemson loses to North Carolina, somebody has to lose their job. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I've never been one to advocate. That's why I'm keeping it nameless. But with that roster, with that, like, somebody's either going to have to be let go or somebody's going to have to be the sacrificial lamb. I don't care that you're playing at North Carolina. Like, this is a team that got absolutely curb stomped by TCU in the home opener. And TCU is a good football team. But with that roster of what Clemson has, you're supposed to be, I mean, not supposed to be, you are the reigning champs in the ACC. You made the playoffs last season. The expectation wasn't for you to be worse this year, especially with the hires that you made, the acquisitions that you made, the retention that you had. So all of this game is on Clemson. North Carolina has absolutely nothing to lose in this game. If they lose this game, it's like, it's year 1 of Bill Belichick.
Like, the thing is, though, that's unique about this, though, Trevor, is I'm not saying that Bill Belichick's going to be gone after 1 year. I have no idea. I don't know what his contract looks like. But when you look at what's left on their schedule, I do think they can be bad enough in year 1 that he has no chance of ever winning there. Just because you won't have the support. Kids are going to look at you and be like, dude, that's a clown show right now. Guys like making out with his girlfriend on the sideline before games. He's old enough to be her grandfather. Like, this is weird. There's a phrase you like to use, Trev. It's weird behavior. That's some weird behavior. And there's just a really negative energy at North Carolina. A win like this can completely change that around. I've said this before. Something that you do that people don't like when you're losing is something that people find endearing when you win. I hate it, but it's just the reality. Like, now it's like, hey, look at that old guy that's got pull. You know what I mean? Like, it's so different when you're winning than when you're losing. This can be the thing that salvages them. But for Clemson, this could be the point where the game that Dabo can't recover from. Like, this is that for them. And if Clemson does to North Carolina what Dabo has done when his back's been against the wall in the past, which is not only win, but win big, then you get to the point where Carolina becomes so toxic that it's like no one's going to go there, and he can't win there now. And the weirdness and the way that they've played, you could have that happen soon in the pot. You just got beat by UCF by 25 points, and you got dominated at home by TCU. You know, it's going to get interesting, Trev. And then they've got to play at Cal, home against Virginia, at Clemson, home against Stanford, at Wake, home against Duke, at NC State. There's not a lot of W's on that list if they don't start playing better. And that's what is intriguing as well. Here's another one, Trev. Two teams fighting for survival. K-State at Baylor. Dave Aranda needs this win bad. I'm so disappointed in Baylor this year, Trev. I mean, they don't have a bad record. I think they're, 3-2? I think this year. Am I correct on that? They haven't had a bye yet, I don't think. They're 3-2. They had no business losing to Arizona State. They completely blew that game. And then they got beat. They should have. They're on the verge of going up 10-0 on Auburn and just run the weirdest set of inside the 10-yard line play calls I've ever seen in my life. Did I make you go back and watch those? Because you were doing something else at the time. I think I made you go. No, maybe that was Vince. I was like, you got to go back and watch this sequence of play calling inside the 10 when it was 3-0 and you're about to take the lead. And instead you fail and they go down and score and it's a different ball game. It might be 14-0. But they just shouldn't have lost either one of those games. And they made Auburn's offense look legitimate, and no one has made them look legitimate since then. Like, they're terrible. So it's just been disappointing. And then, of course, K-State is the biggest disappointment in college football this year outside of Clemson. If it wasn't for Clemson, that's the team we're all talking about. I still don't know what the heck is going on with that.
Shoot, man, I still talk about Kansas State every week. That is crazy.
It's nuts. I mean, I got the Iowa State thing. I mean, you were in the game. It was a close game, but how is that team 2-3 right now? How did they lose to Army? How did they lose to Arizona State? I mean, Trev, Army has lost
not even
to
Arizona
Tarleton State and East Carolina by double digits. They lost at home to North Texas. Their only win is over K-State.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Brian, it wasn't even Arizona State they lost to. They lost to Arizona.
That's what I meant, Arizona, correct.
Like,
yes.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a colossal downfall that I just did not see coming. You and Vince had them winning the Big 12. I had them playing for the Big 12 championship game. And right now, I don't know if they're going to be bowl eligible.
I doubt that they're – I mean, like, honestly, Trev, when you look at their schedule, they got to play at Baylor, home against TCU, at Kansas, home against Texas Tech, at Oklahoma State, at Utah, home against Colorado. If they don't beat Baylor this weekend, it's going to be tough for them to become bowl eligible.
That's so crazy.
That is nuts for a team that's got way too much talent to be 2-3. I still don't get how you lost to Army. Like, that is awful. Just awful. And Chris Kleiman, who I thought highly of as a football coach, you got to start asking yourself, like, dude, like, is this the guy? Like, this is not good. This is not good. This season could completely fall apart. So that's another interesting game. Couple more, Trev, that we'll just quickly talk about. I know this is an interesting one. Let's talk Texas and Florida. I know this is one that you've got your eye on this weekend. I think you're going to talk more about that game tonight, so we won't get into the numbers and from a betting standpoint, but just let's talk about this game real quick, because this is to me well, I'll let you go. I want to hear your thoughts on this game.
I understand that some people have kind of written off Florida, and I understand why. They just haven't looked like the team that we thought that they could look like this year, despite their super difficult schedule. It's just looked ugly. I mean, DJ Lagway's out here throwing 5 interceptions against LSU, and LSU has also not really impressed that much this season, that much either. But Texas is also not impressed that much this season either. They've played one Power 4 opponent, and they're getting ready to play their 5th game of the season. And they did not look impressive against Ohio State either. And so this is going to be a very good litmus test for where Texas is at, because you're going into the swamp against a team that, I mean, I don't know if your back gets more against the wall than what Florida's at and with what Billy. And this was the point in the season last year that Florida started to turn it around. Like this going into this week last year, we were basically talking about. I was like, dude, I mean, I don't know what Billy Napier's buyout is. This could get really ugly. And
weren't
then
they coming off the A&M loss, or was it the maybe they had already lost to A&M? It was they were 2-2. They had lost to A&M 2 weeks before. They had beat Mississippi on the road, and they were going to play UCF. And we're like, he's got to win this game. Well, you had Mississippi State and UCF before Tennessee. It's a little different than having to play Miami and Texas.
Yeah. And so this was kind of the point in the season last year where it's like, okay, like, what's Billy Napier's buyout? What is this going to look like? And the team rallied. They did. I mean, they ended up an 8-win football team, which I did not think was possible going into October last year. And now you have this Texas team where this is where it, doesn't really pay off, playing 3 bad teams in a row. We're going into the month of October still wondering who is Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good spot to be in, especially when you're a top 10 team. When you're still ranked in the top 10 and you have to have questions around who are you? And I'm not talking about are you a finished product? There's no team in college football right now that's a finished product. But I have a gauge now of who Oregon is, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. For Texas, it's the last sample size I saw was on August 31st.
I got something for you, Trev. You want to hear a stat?
I would love to.
Who had more yards against San Jose State, Texas or Stanford?
Stanford.
The point is that 38 points you scored against San Jose State doesn't mean a whole lot to me now.
Yeah.
Like they're not a very good football team. You scored 27 points against UTEP. Here's the name of teams that have scored more points than you against UTEP: Utah State, Louisiana Monroe, and Louisiana Tech. All scored more points against UTEP than did Texas. Here's the list of teams that had more yards against UTEP than Texas: Utah State, UT Martin, Louisiana Monroe, all had more yards. You also had the second lowest yards per play average against UTEP than did anybody else, with Louisiana Tech being the only exception. So, and then you scored 55 points on a Sam Houston State team who has lost this year 41-24, 38-21, 37-20 to Hawaii. And those games were against Western Kentucky, UNLV, and Hawaii. You beat them 55-0. Good for you. That doesn't tell me a dang thing about your football team. So this is a game where this offense has to look like it has a pulse this week. It's not even about winning or losing to me for Texas. I just don't know how they lose to this team. This Florida offense is epically bad. You have to look like you have a pulse on offense.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to start buying into your hype again. Because they have looked very mediocre on offense. And you can blame it on Arch all you want, but the biggest culprit to me, Trevor, is the one you and I talked about preseason. It's the offensive line.
Yep.
That's their biggest problem.
Agreed.
How bad do you think this game is going to get? Or do you think it will?
I see it going one of two ways.
Okay.
I either think Texas is going to come out and kind of put, belt to, and silence some people of like, hey, this is why we were the preseason number 1 ranked team in the country. This is a statement opportunity for them. Or I could see them losing a close game, legitimately just imploding on the road. I don't see it going either. I don't know if Texas wins a close one. I don't. Because I think Florida's only chance of winning this game is to make it super ugly to match how ugly their offense has been.
Yeah.
And so those are the two ways I see it going. I think Texas either wins big or they lose a close one.
I think they win big. I think Florida's players have played hard for Billy Napier in the past. I don't think that they can recover from this. Trevor, that game against Miami, Florida, was one of the ugliest offensive performances I've ever seen. It was terrible. They had 141 yards of offense in that game. 141 yards of offense. That's abysmally bad. Yes, Miami's got a very good defense. It's not that good. 141 yards of offense against Miami. Like that's not good. And a big part is they're putting way too much on DJ Lagway. And we talked about this in the preseason. They're putting way too much on that kid. Yeah. This is what happens when your preseason quarterback rankings are built on guys who you are still evaluating based on what they were in high school, not what they've done in college.
Facts.
That's why DJ Lagway is a very talented kid, but he had no business being ranked as high as he was preseason. Neither did Arch, because you got to let them see that they can do it as starters first, and they didn't. So, yeah, very, very interesting game. And then finally, Trev, here's an intriguing game for Notre Dame: BC at Pitt. BC is struggling this year under Billy Napier or under Bill O'Brien. Can they get it turned around? Because I had some high hopes for BC after that Michigan State game. I was like, you know what? They can score, and their defense is a mess. But then they went on the road and lost to Stanford by 10, and then they just lost at home to Cal. And their defense is bad. Trevor.
Dude, really losing to Stanford is absolutely crazy.
And gave up 399 yards and 6.8 yards per play. And no, Stanford has not really gotten that much better on offense. They're still pretty terrible.
No.
That was a terrible game by BC.
With a really bad offensive line, Micah Ford went 17 carries for $157 and a tutty.
That ain't good.
No. And your guy, Ben Gulbranson, went 13 to 22 for 186 yards and a touchdown, no turnovers.
So bad. He's so bad. I think I texted you after that game, and I was like, dude, Notre Dame is going to absolutely annihilate Boston College. Now BC may score on Notre Dame. That's a game where BC could score 28 points and get and you could multiply their points by time too, and it still won't be enough to win.
It would be one of those where Boston College could score 28 and lose by 35.
Yes.
Dude.
Yes.
Yeah, that defense is horrid.
Yeah. It's bad. It's bad. The true freshman quarterback for Cal went 22 of 34 for 254 yards and 2 touchdowns against BC's defense. Yeah. Yeah. He's a good player. He's a good player. He flipped from Oregon late in the process. Well, actually, he went to Oregon, transferred after the spring. But for Pitt, they had a big missed opportunity this weekend, Trev. And I'm curious how they recover from this. Because if you're Pitt, you had no business losing at home to Louisville, and you definitely shouldn't have lost to West Virginia. Because look at what West Virginia has done outside of that game. It ain't pretty. They have beaten Robert Morris and then lost to Ohio, got killed by Kansas, and got destroyed by Utah. And they beat you by a touchdown. If Pitt loses this game and falls to 2-3, Trev, the rest of their schedule is at Florida State, at Syracuse, home against NC State, at Stanford, home against Notre Dame, at Georgia Tech, home against Miami. If they lose to Boston College this weekend, they're not going to a bowl game, and he is firmly on the hot seat. Yeah. Firmly on the hot seat. Because now in 3 years, you had that one decent season at 7-6 where your team completely collapsed at the end of the season, surrounded by what? A 4-8 and a 3-9. If you don't win this weekend, Trev, honestly, I don't know that they get to 4 wins. Who's the other win? At Stanford, at Syracuse? You're not beating Florida State on the road. You're not beating Notre Dame. You're not beating Georgia Tech. You're not beating Miami. Who are you going to beat? These are 2 coaches that could be in a little bit of a trouble. Narduzzi more so than O'Brien. O'Brien, from the standpoint of this year, is going to go pretty bad. If you got to pull off an upset at some point in time, because I always feel like when you have a bad loss, you need to have some sort of upset win. Well, now you've got 2 bad losses. So if you lose at Pitt, you're now 1-4, and your next game's a home game against Clemson. Then you've got UConn, who's a quality football team. Then you're at Louisville, home against Notre Dame, home against SMU, home against Georgia Tech, and at Syracuse. The loser of this game, I think, is not going to a bowl game. Think about that.
That is crazy. I am astonished at, and I don't know what the reason is, but Desmond Reed has not been who I thought he was going to be this year. At all. Through 4 games, he has 142 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And it's not. And as a receiver, he has 6 catches for 71 yards and no touchdowns. That is crazy. That is not something that I had kids. I mean, Desmond Reed was in my top 5 running backs in preseason in college football. Not like on Notre Dame's schedule, not like in college football. I had him as a top 5 running back, and he has done nada.
Yep.
And I haven't watched Pitt enough to say, like, okay, maybe the offensive line is that bad, but like, how bad is your offensive line where you're averaging 38 rushing yards a game?
And he got hurt against West Virginia, didn't play against Louisville, but even then he had 10 carries for 46 yards against Central Michigan. Like he caught 1 pass against Duquesne, none against West Virginia. Like they weren't even really using him before he got hurt the way that they should. Like they're bad. They're bad. They're really bad. So it's been a weird season so far, Trev, and I don't think it's going to slow down. I think it's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. And this is the nature of NIL and open portal systems. It's just there's a lot of teams there's going to be just like this all the time, unfortunately, and that's kind of where we're at. So, Trev, we did have a couple super chats I wanted to get to real quick. Number one from my guy Raymond Harton. Thank you so much, Raymond. He says, for anyone watching the IB show that aren't members of the boards, you should be. Film breakdowns and upon further reviews are amazing this year. You won't get this anywhere else. Thank you, Raymond. We greatly, greatly appreciate that. And he's right, folks. If you are not a member of the message board, you are absolutely, absolutely missing out on that. And then Wade Garrett with the super chat, he says, hey, guys, what's the next step this defense would need to take after last week's improved performance to make you feel comfortable that it's heading in the right direction? Go Irish. Thank you, Wade.
I mean, for me, it starts with the linebackers. You got to start letting them play free. Like overall, like big picture, we can talk being aggressive, but if there's one specific thing that I want to see this weekend to let me know that they're going in the right direction is it's letting these linebackers off the leash, because your secondary can cover better. Your D-line can get home, but teams are going to start to be able to figure out that your linebackers are sitting and hanging back, waiting. They're going to be able to start running the football on you. And you have too good of a linebacking room of 5 guys that can all be impactful players to just let them sit back and absorb contact. That is the number one thing for me. Number one thing.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think if the linebackers are attacking, that tells us that the needed scheme shift has happened. I think that's a really, what's the one thing? Because wasn't that Wade's question? It was, what's the next step this defense would need to take? Okay, that's kind of like one thing. It's you, because if you turn the linebackers loose, everything else has to fit with that. It means you have to change your coverage structure, you have to change this, you have to change that. You can't do a million snaps of cover 2 and cover 4. I still can't believe they're literally playing like old school quarters, like bailing quarters. Like I didn't know that people still did that in non 2-minute situations. But I mean, that's kind of what they're doing. You can't do that if you're triggering your linebackers. You can, but
that is an option you could do.
It's a choice,
but
I don't know if it's a good one. But you can do it.
Yeah,
it's not illegal. It's just not
it
wise.
Should be.
It should be. It should be. Oh my goodness gracious! And then James Salumi with a question. James had this on the message board. It was a really good conversation. And he says, what's the toughest matchup for each position unit looking at the rest of the schedule? Go Irish, baby. James, thank you for your super chat. So, offensive line, I would say the toughest matchup left on their schedule, Trevor, is probably USC. If we're going to talk just front. If we're going to talk front and linebackers, I mean, you could argue it's Boise or Pitt. I mean, the thing about the offense is they don't face a lot of good defenses the rest of the year.
I mean, if I'm going to break it down, I'd probably go like offensive line going against the defensive line. I'd probably say USC. Running backs against linebackers, I'll say Pitt. Because I think Pitt has a pair of linebackers that are remote, the only linebacking pairing that are remotely close to being on Jay Love and Jadarian Price's level athletically. Like, I think those are that have a chance. I don't think that they'll be able to, but I would say them. Receivers, toughest matchup. Again, it's probably USC. But even then, USC's defense isn't anything special either.
Right, agree.
And then defensively, it's a much more interesting conversation defensively. Like, from a quarterback contained standpoint, I mean, I'm probably either going to go CJ Bailey or, I mean, honestly, Blake Horvath. So even last year, like, Jaden Maeva didn't do a whole lot against them with their legs. Receiving core, it's USC.
That's for like DBs.
Yeah.
It's USC, then Boston College, and NC State are right behind them.
Yep.
USC's definitely one, but that's the one unit on this team that faces a lot of tough tests still left on the schedule.
The DBs,
because then they also have to go. Syracuse is a much improved receiving core as well. Gill's a good player. Jonte Cook stepping up. So, like, that's the one unit that will get legitimately tested another 3-4 times.
Yep. I mean, Pitt has productive receivers too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna give you a little something, Trev. So Notre Dame they have 8 games left. I'm missing somebody. Who did I leave off of the schedule? I got Boise. Oh, NC State.
No, they have 8 games left.
I only have 7 teams written down, so I'm missing somebody. So I've got Boise. I've got NC State, USC, Boston College, Navy, Pitt. Where's Pitt? Let's see here. So you got Pitt. I'm missing Syracuse. That's what I'm missing. All right, so you want to hear something crazy? Here's the current ranking for scoring defense for the rest of the teams on their schedule. Boise State, 75th scoring defense. NC State, 100th. USC, 64th. Boston College, 98th. Navy, 30th. Pitt, 60th. Syracuse, 112th. And Stanford, 111th. So that's why I keep saying you just got to be a top 25 defense, and Notre Dame won't play a close game the rest of the year. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to look like last year. Just don't look like you did the first 3 games.
That's crazy.
That's it. Because this offense is going to score because they're A, really good, and B, the teams that they play are really bad on defense. And none of those teams have really played anybody that's lights out on offense. I mean, the best team that NC State played is Virginia. It's very good. I mean, who's the best offense that USC played? Illinois?
Probably Illinois.
Michigan State? You know, I mean, who's BC ranks 98th. Who's the best offense they've played? Cal, Stanford, Michigan State, and Fordham. That's the 4 teams they play, and they still rank 98. Now, Notre Dame ranks 99th in scoring, but Notre Dame has played Miami, Texas A&M, Purdue, and Arkansas. Like, we're having a different conversation if the first 4 games are Fordham, Michigan State, Stanford, and Cal.
Yeah.
We have not yet realized how bad Chris Ash might be if that's the first 4 games for Notre Dame, and they'd ranked 1 spot ahead of Notre Dame in scoring defense. You know what I mean? Like, you look at Stanford and Syracuse. Okay, Syracuse is the only one that has an excuse because Syracuse has had to play Tennessee. They had to play, Duke. They had to play Clemson. They had to play UConn. Like, they've actually played a decent schedule. And Stanford has played Hawaii, BYU, Boston College, Virginia, and San Jose State. So 2 teams that have played the best offense they've played is Virginia, and they got shredded by both of them. Like, that's not good. So that's why I say that's why the defense just has to be a top 25 unit.
Yeah.
They just have to be. That's it. Top 25, top 30, and this team won't lose a game. Yeah. But there's, James, there's not a lot of really tough tests. There aren't. And that's why you feel good about them running the table, but it's like, but you kind of got to blow people out Like the only two really teams that I look at and say those are good football teams left after Boise is really just USC and Navy. Because NC State's got a really good offense, but their defense is poo. I mean, it's poo. Now, they're dangerous because of how good their offense is, but their defense is a mess. USC's good enough on defense to make a stop in some key moments to maybe beat you.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to watching Chris Ash defend the triple option, like, at all.
I'm keeping that so far in the back of my mind until I have to think about it. Oh gosh. Ugh.
Yep. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, good deal.
Question, James.
That was a good question. That was a good way to take us home, James. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Brian and Sean will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for RTCF. And
yes, my guy. That is so sadly potentially true.
I was just about to say, I don't know what's worse, the fact that that's a viable option or the fact that it's not completely inaccurate nor off the table. But yes.
Like the fact that he's being sarcastic, but also there's some truth behind the sarcasm is what makes that funny but sad all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, like D. Masak2 said, be sure to like this video if you haven't before you head out of here. IB Nation Sports Beat's going live, I believe, tonight at 5 p.m., so make sure you check them out. Brian and Sean will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for RTCF. But until then, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Tune in for Vince and I tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time on the spread option. That'll be over on the CFB Nation channel. All the more reason to be subscribed to that channel as well. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, like we've talked about throughout the show, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.